Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's good to be here yet another Saturday and able to jump into y'all's word. This week we're going to be in Numbers. It's entitled Nasso or Elevate. Um, so we're going to jump into prayer and get into the word. Excuse me. Father, Abba, we love you. We thank you for another opportunity to serve you, and we thank you for this Shabbat. We ask that you lead us in the right direction and show us what you want us to learn and guide us and keep us. Pray that you bless each and every one here. In Yeshua's name, amen. All right, we're going to begin in Numbers chapter 4, verse 21. I'm going to get a drink of water here real quick. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, let me switch to the scriptures, my preferred. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, saying, take a census of the sons of Kehath from among the children of Levi, by their clans, by their father's house, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, all who enter the service to do the work in the tent of appointment. This is the service of the sons of Kehath in the tent of appointment, the most set apart matters. At the breaking of camp, Aaron and his sons shall come, and they shall take down the covering veil and cover the ark of the witness with it, and shall put it on a covering of fine leather, and spread over that an all blue wrapper, and shall insert its poles. And on the table of the showbread, they shall spread a blue wrapper, and shall put it on the dishes, and the ladles, and the bowls, and the jars for pouring, and the showbread on it. And they shall spread over them a scarlet wrapper, and cover the same with a covering of fine leather, and shall insert its poles. And shall take a blue wrapper, and cover the lampstand of the light with its lamps, and its snuffers, and its trays, and its oil vessels, by which they serve it. And they shall put it with all its utensils in a covering of fine leather, and put it on a bar. And over the golden slaughter place they shall spread a blue wrapper, and cover it with a covering of fine leather, and shall insert its poles. And shall take all the utensils of service with which they serve in the set apart place, and shall put them in a blue wrapper, covering them with a covering of fine leather, and put them on a bar, and shall remove the ashes from the slaughter place, and spread a purple wrapper over. And shall put on it all its utensils by which they serve there, the fire holders, the forks, and the shovels, and the basins, and all the utensils of the slaughter place, and shall spread on it a covering of fine leather, and insert its poles. And when Aaron and his sons have finished covering the set-apart objects and all the furnishings of the set-apart place at the breaking of the camp, then the sons of Kehath shall come to lift them. But let them not touch it, and let them not touch that which is set apart, lest they die. These matters are the burden of the sons of Kehath in the tent of appointment. In the oversight of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, this is Numbers 4, verse 16. In the oversight of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, is the oil for the light, and the sweet incense, and the daily grain offering, and the anointing oil, and the oversight of all the dwelling place, and all that is in it, with the set apart place and its furnishings. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, saying, do not cut off the tribe of the clans of the Kehathites from among the Levites, but do this to them, and they shall live and not die when they approach the most set apart objects. Aaron and his sons shall go in and appoint each of them to his service and his burden. They are not, however, to go in and watch while the set apart objects are being covered, lest they die. Numbers 4:21. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, take a census also of the sons of Gershon, by their father's house, by their clans. Register them from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, all who enter to perform the service, to do the service in the tent of appointment. This is the service of the clans of the Gershonites, in serving and in bearing burdens. They shall bear the curtains of the dwelling place and the tent of appointment with its covering, the covering of fine leather that's on it, the covering for the door of the tent of appointment, and the screens of the courtyard, and the covering for the door of the gate of the courtyard, which is around the dwelling place and slaughter place, and their cords, all the equipment for their service, and all that is made for them. So shall they serve. At the mouth of Aaron and his sons is all the service of the sons of the Gershonites, all their burden and all their service, and ye shall appoint to them all the duty of all their burden. This is the service of the clans of the sons of Gershon, in the tent of appointment, and let their duties be under the hand of Ithamar, son of Aaron the priest. As for the sons of Merari, register them by their clans and by their father's house. Register them from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, all who enter the service to do the work of the tent of appointment. And this is the duty of their burden, according to all their service for the tent of appointment, the boards of the dwelling place, and its bars, and its columns, and its sockets, and the columns around the courtyard with their sockets, and their pegs, and their cords, with all their equipment, and all their service, and assign to each by name the equipment of the duty of their burden. This is the service of the clans of the sons of Merari, as all their service for the tent of appointment, under the hand of Ithamar, son of Aaron the priest. So Moshe and Aaron and the leaders of the congregation registered the sons of the Kehathites by their clans and by their father's house, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, all who entered the service for the work in the tent of appointment. And their registered ones by their clans were 2,750. These were the registered ones of the clans of the Kehathites, all those serving in the tent of appointment, whom Moshe and Aaron registered according to the mouth of Yahuwah by the hand of Moshe. And those registered ones of the sons of Gershon by their clans and by their father's house, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, all who entered the service for work in the tent of appointment, the registered ones by their clans, by their father's house, were 2,630. These were the registered ones of the clans of the sons of Gershon, of all who serve in the tent of appointment, whom Moshe and Aaron registered according to the mouth of Yahuwah. And those of the clans of the sons of Merari, who were registered by their clans, by their father's house, from 30 years old above, even to 50 years old, all who entered the service for the work in the tent of appointment, the registered ones by their clans were 3,200. These were the registered ones of the clans of the sons of Merari, whom Moshe and Aaron registered according to the mouth of Yahuwah by the hand of Moshe. All the registered ones of the Levites, whom Moshe and Aaron and the leaders of Yisrael registered by their clans and by their fathers' houses, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, all who came to do the work of the service and the work of bearing burdens in the tent of appointment. Their registered ones were 8,580. According to the mouth of Yahuwah, they were registered by the hand of Moshe, each according to his service and according to his burden. Thus were they registered by him as Yahuwah commanded Moshe. That concludes chapter 4 here in Numbers.
That's quite a bit.
Yeah. And we're going to be going through 7 verse 89. So at least 7 is going to be a pretty good one. So we've got plenty of scripture today, I believe.
Welcome aboard, Kaylee. Good to see you.
Hi, Kaylee. All right. Numbers 5, verse 1. Excuse me. Still waking up with coffee. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, command the children of Israel to send out of the camp every leper and everyone who has a discharge, and whoever becomes defiled for a being. Send out both male and female. Send them outside the camp, so that they do not defile their camps in the midst of which I dwell. And the children of Israel did so, to send them outside the camp, as Yahuwah had spoken to Moshe. So the children of Israel did. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel. When a man or woman commits any sin that man commits in trespass against Yahuwah, and that being is guilty, then they shall confess their sin which they have done, and shall restore his guilt in its principal, plus 1/5 of it, and give it to whom he has been guilty. But if the man has no relative to restore the guilt to, the guilt which is restored goes to Yahuwah, for the priest, in addition to the ram of the atonement, with which atonement is made for him. And every contribution of all the set-apart gifts of the children of Israel, which they bring to the priest, becomes his. And every man's set-apart gifts becomes his. Whatever any man gives, the priest becomes his. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, When any man's wife turns aside and has committed a trespass against him, and a man has intercourse with her, and it is hidden from the eyes of her husband, and it is concealed that she has defiled herself, and there was no witness against her, nor was she caught, and a spirit of jealousy comes upon him, and he becomes jealous of his wife, who has defiled herself, or a spirit of jealousy comes upon him, and he becomes jealous of his wife, although she has not defiled herself, then the man shall bring his wife to the priest, and he shall bring the offering for her, 1/10 of an ephah of barley flour. He is not to pour oil on it or put frankincense on it, because it is a grain offering of jealousy, an offering for remembering, for bringing crookedness to remembrance. And the priest shall bring her near, and shall make her stand before Yahuwah. And the priest shall take set-apart water in the earthen vessel, and take some of the dust that is on the floor of the dwelling place, and put it in the water. And the priest shall make the woman stand before Yahuwah, and shall uncover the woman's head, and put the offering for remembering in her hands, which is the grain offering of jealousy, while the priest holds in his hand the bitter water that brings a curse. And the priest shall make her swear, and say to the woman, If no man has lain with you, and if you have not turned aside to uncleanness under your husband's authority, be free from this bitter water that brings a curse. But if you have turned aside under your husband's authority, and if you have defiled yourself, and some man other than your husband has lain with you, then the priest shall make the woman swear with the oath of the curse, and he shall say to the woman, Yahuwah make you a curse and an oath among your people, when Yahuwah makes your thigh waste away and your belly swell. And this water that causes the curse shall go into your inward parts, and make your belly swell and your thigh waste away. And the woman shall say, Amen, Amen. And the priest shall write these curses in a book, and shall wipe them off into the bitter water, and shall make the woman drink the bitter water that brings the curse, and the water that brings the curse shall enter her to become bitter. And the priest shall take the grain offering of jealousy from the woman's hand, and shall wave the offering before Yahuwah, and bring it to the slaughter place. And the priest shall take a hand filled with the offering as its remembrance offering, and burn it on the slaughter place, and afterward make the woman drink the water. And when he has made her drink the water, then it shall be, if she has defiled herself, and has committed a trespass against her husband, that the water that brings the curse shall enter her and become bitter, and her belly shall swell, and her thighs shall waste away, and the woman shall become a curse among her people. But if the woman has not defiled herself and is clean, then she shall be clear and shall conceive children. This is the Torah of jealousy, when a wife turns aside under her husband's authority and defiles herself. Or when a spirit of jealousy comes upon a man, and he becomes jealous of his wife, then he shall make the woman stand before Yahuwah, and the priest shall do to her all this Torah, and the man shall be clear from crookedness, but the woman bear her crookedness. That's a lot to digest there.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a tough chapter.
Go ahead, Kaylee.
I don't know. I mean, not trying to let the old feminist in me come out,
For sure.
which I was never really a big feminist anyways. I always understood there was rules meant to be played between the genders. But, regardless of knowing that, feminism kind of sinks into society.
Mm-hmm.
And it does kind of bother me that it's just the woman, but it's not really, it doesn't really matter if it bothers me or not.
For sure. And that's when I was reading this, it's hard to take in with modern society the way that it is. God's system, of course
I
society's
had
going to do away with that the best that it can.
I saw something that was secular talking about women that have intercourse, that a piece of the man's DNA stays in a woman because her reproductive organs are on the inside. Now I don't know if that's actually factual or not, or if it was just some random article I read. Like I would have to go back and verify it, but it kind of makes sense to me that maybe it's more severe for a woman because our reproductive organs are on the inside versus a male where it's exterior. And maybe that might be one of the reasons why it's not really against God's law that a man can marry more than one woman versus like a
Mm-hmm.
woman marrying multiple men. And
Exactly.
it could be for women's protection, to protect them,
Exactly.
biologically.
Exactly. Very good points.
And then also just figuring out who the father is. Like if a man has multiple women, like there's no question who the father or the mother is. But if a woman has multiple men, then there is a
Mm-hmm.
question who the father is.
For sure.
And then this test of jealousy seems to be what uh, Jesus went through with that last like taste of water that he had before he died.
Bitter water,
Yeah,
or the vinegar, if you will.
right.
I just don't see how that's really parallel to this. That's my personal opinion. Like, it doesn't seem like it's the actual practice. Like, he didn't have to, consume water that had the grain offering burnt and then mixed in water. I don't know. I don't really see it. I've heard people say that. I just don't really see it.
I
Gotcha.
got you. I'm good here. We can go on to 6 if you want.
The Nazarite vow. Good one here. Get another drink of water before I get going again, so bear with me. Hope you don't mind my slurping. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, When a man or woman does separate by making a vow of a Nazarite to be separate to Yahuwah, he separates himself from wine and strong drink. He drinks neither vinegar of wine nor vinegar of strong drink. Neither does he drink any grape juice, nor eat any grapes or raisins. All the days of his separation, he does not eat whatever is made of the grapevine, from seed to skin. All the days of the vow of his separation, a razor does not come upon his head, until the days are completed for which he does separate himself to Yahuwah. He is set apart. He shall let the locks of the hair of his head grow long. All the days of his separation to Yahuwah, he does not go near a dead body. He does not make himself unclean for his father, or for his mother, for his brother, or his sister, when they die, because his separation to Elohim is on his head. All the days of his separation, he is set apart to Yahuwah. And when anyone dies beside him in an instant, suddenly, and he has defiled the head of his separation, then he shall shave his head on the day of his cleansing. On the 7th day he shaves it. And on the 8th day he brings 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons to the priest to the door of the tent of appointment. And the priest shall prepare one as a sin offering, and the other as an ascending offering, and shall make atonement for him, because he sinned by reason of the dead body. And he shall set apart his head on that day, and shall separate to Yahuwah the days of his separation, and shall bring a male lamb a year old as a guilt offering. But the former days are not counted, because his separation was defiled. And this is the Torah of the Nazarite. When the days of his separation are completed, he is brought to the door of the tent of appointment, and he shall bring his offering to Yahuwah, 1 male lamb a year old, a perfect one, as an ascending offering, and 1 how do you pronounce that? Yeah, you or ooh, I forget now. Brain farting. Lamb a year old, a perfect one, as a sin offering, and 1 ram, a perfect one, as a peace offering, and a basket of unleavened bread, cakes of fine flour mixed with oil, and unleavened thin cakes anointed with oil, and their grain offering with their drink offerings. And the priest shall bring them before Yahuwah, and prepare his sin offering and his ascending offering. And he shall prepare the ram as a slaughtering of peace offerings to Yahuwah, together with a basket of unleavened bread. And the priest shall prepare its grain offering and its drink offering. And the Nazarite shall shave the head of his separation at the door of the tent of appointment, and shall take the hair from the head of his separation, and shall put it on the fire which is under the slaughtering of the peace offerings. And the priest shall take the boiled shoulder of the ram, and 1 unleavened cake from the basket, and 1 unleavened thin cake, and put them upon the hands of the Nazarite after he has shaved his hair of separation. Then the priest shall wave them, a wave offering before Yahuwah. It is set apart for the priest, because the breast of the wave offering, and besides the thigh of the contribution. And afterwards the Nazarite shall drink wine. This is the Torah of the Nazarite, who vows to Yahuwah the offering for his separation, and besides that, whatever else his hand is able to provide, according to the vow which he takes. So he shall do according to the Torah of his separation. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, This is how you bless the children of Israel. Say to them, Yahuwah bless you and guard you. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and show favor to you. Yahuwah lift up his face upon you and give you peace. Thus they shall put my name on the children of Israel, and I myself shall bless them. That's the end of chapter 6 there.
Good stuff.
Yeah, and Paul took he was a Nazarene, or took a Nazarite vow, right? Or am I mistaken?
Acts 21, 20 through 26.
Yeah, we're going to get there later.
Oh, yeah. How convenient.
Yup. I've heard people mention that Jesus took a Nazarite vow. What was it? At the Last Supper, I don't think he drinks the wine there. I think he pours it, but I don't think he drinks it. I think he lets them drink it. I don't know. Interesting though.
I'd like to see that through more. It's an interesting concept.
Yeah, I'm not saying I could take you through it. I've just heard people talk about it before.
Nice. Well, take us through it now, all-knowing Yahoo.
I bet Kaylee knows more than I do.
That's all right.
I'm sorry, what did you say? What happened? I missed something.
I was just telling everyone how knowledgeable you are.
We're talking about specifically if Yeshua or Jesus could have taken the Nazarene or Nazarite vow. And he made one reference, probably the only thing he knows about it, about Yeshua not drinking wine at the Last Supper, just pouring a drink. And I said that'd be interesting rabbi trail. And then he mentioned you probably knowing everything on the matter. So go ahead, bring up your presentation and slides that you had prepared, Miss Kaylee.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on to 7. It's going to be a long one. Might have to stop and do some
89 verses. Oh my goodness.
Do some breathing.
Not all chapters are created equal.
All right, number 7, verse 1. And it came to be when Moshe finished setting up the dwelling place that he anointed it and set it apart and all its furnishings, as well as the slaughter place and all its utensils. Thus he anointed them and set them apart. And the leaders of Israel, heads of the fathers' houses, who were the leaders of the tribes and over the ones registered, drew near. And they brought their offering before Yahuwah, 6 covered wagons and 12 cattle, a wagon for every 2 of the leaders, and for each one a bull. And they brought them near before the dwelling place. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Accept these from them, and they shall be used in doing the service of the tent of appointment. And you shall give them to the Levites, each one according to his service. And Moshe took the wagons and the cattle, and gave them to the Levites. He gave 2 wagons and 4 cattle to the sons of Gershon, according to their service. And he gave 4 wagons and 8 cattle to the sons of Merari, according to their service, under the hand of Ithamar, son of Aaron the priest. But to the sons of Kehath he gave none, because theirs was the service of the set-apart objects, which they bore on their shoulders. And the leaders brought the dedication offering of the slaughter place in the day it was anointed. So the leaders brought their offering before the slaughtering place. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, Let them bring their offering, each one, or 1 leader each day, for the dedication of the slaughter place. And the one who brought his offering on the first day was Nahshon, son of Amminadab, from the tribe of Yehudah. And his offering was 1 silver dish, the weight of which was 130 shekels, 1 silver bowl of 70 shekels, according to the shekel of the set-apart place, both of them filled with fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, 1 gold ladle of 10 shekels, filled with incense, 1 young bull, 1 ram, 1 male lamb a year old as an ascending offering, 1 male goat as a sin offering, and as a slaughtering of peace offerings, 2 cattle, 5 rams, 5 male goats, 5 male lambs a year old. This was the offering of Nahshon, son of Amminadab. On the second day, Nathaniel, son of Zur, leader of Yissachar, brought near. He brought his offering, 1 silver dish, the weight of which was 130 shekels, 1 silver bowl of 70 shekels, according to the shekel of the set-apart place, both of them filled with fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, 1 gold ladle of 10 shekels, filled with incense, 1 young bull, 1 ram, 1 male lamb a year old as an ascending offering, 1 male goat as an sin offering, and as a slaughtering of peace offerings, 2 cattle, 5 rams, 5 male goats, 5 male lambs a year old. This was the offering of Nathaniel, son of Zur. On the 3rd day of Eliab, son of Helon, leader of the children of Zebulun, his offering was 1 silver dish, the weight of which was 130 shekels, 1 silver bowl of 70 shekels, according to the shekel of the set-apart place, both of them filled with fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering. 1 gold ladle of 10 shekels filled with incense, 1 young bull, 1 ram, 1 male lamb a year old, as an ascending offering, 1 male goat as a sin offering, and as a slaughtering of peace offerings, 2 cattle, 5 rams, 5 male goats, 5 male lambs a year old. This was the offering of Eliab, son of Helon. On the 4th day, Elitzer, son of Shedaiah, leader of the children of Reuben, his offering was 1 silver dish, the weight of which was 130 shekels, 1 silver bowl of 70 shekels, according to the shekel of the set-apart place, both of them filled with fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, 1 gold ladle of 10 shekels filled with incense, 1 young bull, 1 ram, 1 male lamb a year old as an ascending offering, 1 male goat as a sin offering, and as a slaughtering of peace offerings, 2 cattle, 5 rams, 5 male goats, 5 male lambs a year old. This was the offering of Elitzer, son of Shedaiah. On the 5th day, Shemuel, son of Shurshadai, leader of the children of Shimon, his offering was 1 silver dish, the weight of which was 130 shekels, 1 silver bowl of 70 shekels, according to the shekel of the set-apart place, both of them filled with fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, 1 gold ladle of 10 shekels, filled with incense, 1 young bull, 1 ram, 1 male lamb a year old, as an ascending offering, 1 male goat as a sin offering, and as a slaughtering of peace offerings, 2 cattle, 5 rams, 5 male goats, 5 male lambs a year old. This was the offering of Shelumiel, son of Shurishadai. On the 6th day, Eliasaph, son of Deuel, a leader of the children of Gad, his offering was 1 silver dish, the weight of which was 130 shekels, 1 silver bowl of 70 shekels, according to the shekel of the set-apart place, both of them filled with fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, 1 gold ladle of 10 shekels, filled with incense, 1 young bull, 1 ram, 1 male lamb a year old, as an ascending offering, 1 male goat as a sin offering, and as a slaughtering of peace offerings, 2 cattle, 5 rams, 5 male goats, 5 male lambs a year old. This was the offering of Eliasaph, the son of Deuel. On the 7th day, Elishama, son of Ammihud, leader of the children of Ephraim, his offering was 1 silver dish, the weight of which was 130 shekels, 1 silver bowl of 70 shekels, according to the shekel of the set-apart place, both of them filled with fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, 1 gold ladle of 10 shekels, filled with incense, 1 young bull, 1 ram, 1 male lamb a year old, as an ascending offering, 1 male goat as a sin offering, and as a slaughtering of peace offerings, 2 cattle, 5 rams, 5 male goats, 5 male lambs a year old. This was the offering of Elishama, son of Ammihud. On the 8th day, Gamliel, son of Pedazur, leader of the children of Manasseh, his offering was 1 silver dish, the weight of which was 130 shekels, 1 silver bowl of 70 shekels, according to the shekel of the set-apart place, both of them filled with fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, 1 gold ladle of 10 shekels, filled with incense, 1 young bull, 1 ram, 1 male lamb a year old, as an ascending offering, 1 male goat as a sin offering, and as a slaughtering of peace offerings, 2 cattle, 5 rams, 5 male goats, 5 male lambs a year old. This was the offering of Gamliel, son of Pedazur. On the 9th day, Abidan, son of Gedoni, leader of the children of Benjamin, his offering was 1 silver dish, the weight of which was 130 shekels, 1 silver bowl of 70 shekels, according to the shekel of the set-apart place, both of them filled with fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, 1 gold ladle of 10 shekels, filled with incense, 1 young bull, 1 ram, 1 male lamb a year old as an ascending offering. 1 male goat as a sin offering, and as a slaughtering of peace offerings, 2 cattle, 5 rams, 5 male goats, 5 male lambs a year old. This was the offering of Abaddon, son of Gedoni. On the 10th day, Ahiatzar, son of Ammishaddai, leader of the children of Dan, his offering was 1 silver dish, the weight of which was 130 shekels, 1 silver bowl of 70 shekels, according to the shekel of the set-apart place, both of them filled with fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, 1 gold ladle of 10 shekels filled with incense, 1 young bull, 1 ram, 1 male lamb a year old as an ascending offering, 1 male goat as a sin offering, and as a slaughtering of peace offerings, 2 cattle, 5 rams, 5 male goats, 5 male lambs a year old. This was the offering of Ahiatzar, son of Ammishaddai. On the 11th day, Pagiel, son of Ochran, leader of the children of Asher, his offering was 1 silver dish, the weight of which was 130 shekels, 1 silver bowl of 70 shekels, according to the shekel of the set-apart place, both of them filled with fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, 1 gold ladle of 10 shekels filled with incense, 1 young bull, 1 ram, 1 male lamb a year old, as an ascending offering, 1 male goat as a sin offering, and as a slaughtering of peace offerings, 2 cattle, 5 rams, 5 male goats, 5 male lambs a year old. This was on the offering of Pagiel, son of Ochran. On the 12th day, Ahira, son of Enan, leader of the children of Naphtali, his offering was 1 silver dish, the weight of which was 130 shekels, 1 silver bowl of 70 shekels, according to the shekel of the set-apart place, both of them filled with fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, 1 gold ladle of 10 shekels filled with incense, 1 young bull of 1 ram, 1 male lamb a year old, as an ascending offering, 1 male goat as a sin offering, and as a slaughtering of peace offerings, 2 cattle, 5 rams, 5 male goats, 5 male lambs a year old. This was the offering of Ahira, son of Enan. This was the dedication of the slaughter place from the leaders of Yisrael when it was anointed. 12 silver dishes, 12 silver bowls, 12 gold ladles. Each silver dish was 130 shekels, and each bowl 70 shekels. All the silver of the vessels was 2,400 shekels, according to the shekel of the set-apart place. I'm going to go to 89, finish it. Yep. The 12 gold ladles filled with incense was 10 shekels each, according to the shekel of the set-apart place. All the gold of the ladles was 120 shekels. All the cattle for the ascending offering were 12 young bulls, the rams 12, the male lambs a year old 12, with their grain offering, and the male goats as a sin offering 12. And all the cattle for the slaughtering of peace offerings were 24 bulls, the rams 60, the male goats 60, the lambs a year old 60. This was the dedication of the slaughter place after it was anointed. And when Moshe went into the tent of appointment to speak with him, he heard the voice of one speaking to him from above the lid of atonement that was on the ark of the witness, from between the 2 cherubim. Thus he spoke to him. Taking a breather.
Woo! Yeah, that was a good one.
So, how much was each silver dish? And
over 100 shekels, from like 120 to 170 or something like that. I forget how much silver is in a shekel, but I want to say Zachary Bauer has a video on like the historical value of silver and how much some of this stuff would have been. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I'd like to get like a value for today in silver would be kind of neat to have.
Right, because yeah, that's a lot.
All right. Anything from anybody on numbers? Who do we have here? Hey, it's Mike.
Greetings, y'all. I hate to interrupt, but I gotta go. Can I say my piece? And I hate to interrupt the reading. I know we talk
Oh,
after.
oh, it's terrible, Mike. Go ahead and interrupt.
Well,
You're not interrupting here.
My neighbors always. I got to run her to the store every weekend or every whatever. I mean, she didn't even come through. Like it'll be 8 hours, and so anyway, it finally came through. And 9 minutes from now, I'm gonna have to walk out the door and okay, so everything's cool. I'm just saying. Real quick, this is for Jamie and anybody else here, quite honestly. Numbers 4, all that those priests did, he will wrap it in blue linen, and then the other guy will put it in leather, and this guy will wrap it in white. Oh, but don't look at. My question is, were these guys doing this for their own salvation? Or were they already saved? Or is this part of a dual? Was this part of their salvation? What if they didn't do it? Was there a sacrifice to regain their salvation? And in Numbers 5, before verse 4, I think the first 3 verses is what we were talking about that one time about what defiles a person, what comes out of a person's body that defiles them. And in this case, it sounds like the man is choosing to remain defiled, and that's perfectly okay with the good Lord. It's just a clear understanding to me. Oh, don't touch me. For instance, a woman, don't touch me. It's the wrong time. He's like, I don't care. We're going to sit down and eat together. The only reason, if I were to be defiled by you, I could not visit the temple. It's not like you're going to go to hell. You're just not able to visit the temple until you're cleansed.
Well, that's the difference between being unclean and a sin. There is a difference. They're not synonymous.
Yeah, and then
but my question to you, I guess, in the regards to being saved, is anyone truly saved yet, or have we just been ransomed to be saved?
Right. That's the whole. You have to enter into a contract to actually even have a choice of salvation or not.
And once you're grafted in, I think you can break that contract and get out of covenant.
But then you can also go back in. Broke the 10 Commandments. Moses broke the 10 Commandments, symbolic that we broke it. Now you bring the tablets of your heart, a contrite heart. I am truly sorry. I'm just not like sorry because, oh my God, I got to drink the vinegar because I cheated on my husband. Oh my God. No, you're actually sorry. Oh my God, I hurt my husband. I cheated on him. Oh my God. You bring you bring your own tablets of your heart to renew that blood covenant again. Maybe take a sip of wine as a toast to that blood covenant.
Dude, no, Mike. This is what happened is when Jesus rose from the dead, all cooties ceased to exist.
Yeah, and there is no weapon formed against us that will prosper because of him. Yeah,
the wall of cooties has been broken down by the resurrection. I mean, I'm joking, but I'm serious. Like,
well, yeah, your sarcasm, but didn't he die like 1920, 30, 80 some years ago? And that's when we had the possibility of we weren't born. How could we be saved? I don't know.
I actually just think she was clinging to him is the way I interpret that. I don't think it was a clean issue, but that is an interesting point. I've considered it, but I think sorry, my phone's making noise here. Turn that off. When you look at the Greek or whatever, it's like she was clinging to him, like because she, I'm not sure if it's unclean, although that's an interesting point. Because it seems like there's language in Paul that's like that there was some issue with being clean. I don't know if those things still apply. I mean, what do you guys say about that? I know that exactly. Hebrew roots often don't see that difference or whatever in the new covenant. It seems like.
Well, she would have been defiled by death if she was at the resurrection and did like Michelangelo's statue where she actually held his body. I don't think that's in scripture, but if she did, she would have been defiled by death. She would have been able to socialize after 3 days, but not touch whatever until 7 days or something. So yeah, and
she would have been touching his dead body,
right at the cross.
I mean, the guy who would have been defiling her that was dead is alive now. So like, would that count? I don't know.
Right,
guess.
and it could have been, "Don't touch me, like nobody can touch me. I have not yet ascended to my Father," kind of deal. You know what I mean? Maybe it was
Right,
meant.
right. Whatever it is, I don't think he's telling her she's unclean. I think he's telling her don't hold me back, sort of thing. But like just like she's like because you can imagine how she would cling to him, seeing that he's alive. Like doesn't want to let go of him because it's like he's back. That's how I take it. So
Yeah,
I can see it either
I've
way.
got things to do. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
like
I'm sorry
lady,
you missed
like
me,
get
but
off of me here. Like in a like she's I mean, imagine how she would probably be like not wanting to let go, sort of thing. He's like, like it's hard to know, right? Because it's just written in words, but like I don't think it's far fetched to think she's like, I mean, imagine like the most prized person in your life was dead and now they're alive. Like, how would she just be touching him? He's like, hey, you're defiled because you're, the clean laws or whatever. It'd be like, woman, like I got things to do. Like, I know you love me, but I don't know. Is that reading into it too much? I don't know.
No, that makes perfect sense. He was going to go heal the daughter, Jairus's daughter. He was going to go heal somebody, and the woman with the issue of blood, who is unclean, if she had touched him and remained unclean, she touched the hem of his garment. He was able to leave, since he cleansed her. He was able to he was not defiled. He could go visit this girl, and he was cleansed enough through the Father that he could heal her through the Father or himself, however it was done. And the same with the leper. He healed. It doesn't matter if he touches the leper and the leper is immediately cleansed.
Exactly. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That old chestnut. Is that defiling you? Because it's like he's healing him, but he touched a leper. Well, when did it? Yeah. The moment he touches him, they're clean. So
yeah, he came for the lost children only. But she admitted later, she's getting breadcrumbs. So the Father, if she touched him, the Father would have to immediately give power to her to cure her without Jesus knowing. He would have to, or with his knowing. I'm just saying he turns around and says, "Who touched me?" He probably said that for our sake, but he may really have not known. It's like, wow,
yeah.
What happened? Something happened.
Yeah, I tend to think he is more human than most people seem to think.
Because the angels, the Satan said, "Hey, throw yourself off," because the angels are supposed to move all the rocks out of your path so you don't stumble or stub your toe. And
why would he need angels if like he's God man,
all powerful, right? He's God, knowing, hey, I can just pull these nails out of this cross anytime, but I choose to die. No, he was 100% man, 100%. But I gotta go. Yahoo, you ought to pull up a picture of St. Paul, any painting, St. Paul painting, and you'll see that the Catholics think he is bald, like a bald. They have no idea what a Nazarite vow is, and they think he is balding, not like shaving his head for a Nazarite vow. They think he is actually balding. Look at the old paintings. I love you.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
I'll be listening, but I got to run.
He's like
supermarket.
He's like one of the Greek gods or whatever kind of thing. Weird. That's interesting that you brought that up because I was just. What do you guys do with Hebrews 9:10? Oh, sorry, I'm interrupting your thing. Sorry.
No, we got but like 30 verses left, so we just got Judges and then a few in Acts. So cool. we'll get through that, and then we can rabbi trail wherever and whenever. All right, Judges 13:2. And there was a certain man from Sora of the clan of Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had not borne. And a messenger of Yahuwah appeared to the woman and said to her, "See now, you are barren and have not borne, but you shall conceive, and you shall bear a son. And now, please guard, and do not drink wine or strong drink, and do not eat any unclean food. For look, you are conceiving and bearing a son, and let no razor come upon his head, for the youth is a Nazarite to Elohim from the womb on. And he shall begin to save Yisrael out of the hand of the Philistines." And the woman came and spoke to her husband, saying, "A man of Elohim came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of a messenger of Elohim, very awesome. But I did not ask him where he was from, and he did not declare to me his name. He did say to me, 'See, you are conceiving and bearing a son, And now drink no wine or strong drink, nor eat any unclean food, for the youth is a Nazarite to Elohim from the womb to the day of his death. And Manoah prayed to Yahuwah and said, O Yahuwah, please let the man of Elohim, whom you sent, come to us again and teach us what to do for the youth, who is to be born. And Elohim listened to the voice of Manoah, and the messenger of Elohim came to the woman again as she was sitting in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her. And the woman ran hurriedly and informed her husband and said to him, See, he has appeared to me, the man who came to me the other day. And Manoah arose and went after his wife and came to the man. And he said to him, Are you the man who spoke to this woman? And he said, I am. And Manoah said, Now let your words come true. What is to be the rule for the youth's life and his work? And the messenger of Yahuwah said to Manoah, Let the woman guard all that I said to her. Let her not eat any food that comes from the vine, neither let her drink wine or strong drink, or eat any unclean food. Let her guard all that which I have commanded her. And Manoah said to the messenger of Yahuwah, Please, let us detain you, and prepare a young goat for you. And the messenger of Yahuwah said to Manoah, Though you detain me, I do not eat your food. But if you offer an ascending offering, offer it to Yahuwah. For Manoah did not know he was a messenger of Yahuwah. Then Manoah said to the messenger of Yahuwah, What is your name? When your words come true, then we shall esteem you. And the messenger of Yahuwah said to him, Why do you ask me my name, since it is wondrous? And Manoah took the young goat with the grain offering and offered it upon the rock to Yahuwah. And he did wondrously, while Manoah and his wife looked on. And it came to be as the flame went up toward the heavens from the slaughter place, that the messenger of Yahuwah went up in the flame of the slaughter place. And Manoah and his wife were watching, and they fell on their faces to the ground. And the messenger of Yahuwah did not appear any more to Manoah and his wife. Then Manoah knew that he was a messenger of Yahuwah. And Manoah said to his wife, We shall certainly die, because we have seen Elohim. But his wife said to him, If Yahuwah had been pleased to put us to death, he would not have accepted an ascending offering and a grain offering from our hands, nor would he have shown us all this, nor would he have let us hear the like of this. So the woman bore a son and called his name Shimshon. And the child grew, and Yahuwah blessed him. And the spirit of Yahuwah began to move him at Mahanadan, between Zor and Eshtal.
Well done. Man, you do a great job with those names.
I just don't think about it too hard and just read them. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know. I just go with it.
It sounds great.
I act like I know what I'm doing, but I really don't.
Yeah.
Sounds more Hebrewish. Yeah, I think Manoah is how people usually say it.
Well, let's just
But
pick
I like
one
your
here.
ver- I like your version.
I really like the scriptures. I really like King James too. But anytime I take it back to Hebrew or Greek, I like the way that the scriptures translates it. I'm not saying that it's right and that it doesn't have error. I believe that they all do to an extent. I'm not saying the word of God is error. Don't get me wrong there, but the translation of it. Yeah.
I was curious what I mean, it seems to me the one that comes to him is the angel of Yahweh. So is it? I wonder what it is in the original text in the Hebrew. Like, is it just an angel of Yahweh, or is it
Interesting
something particular?
question. In Judges 13:11 here, he says, I am, which is interesting. Who else
Right.
says I am?
And he like hides his name like
Mhm.
that. That
He says
phrase.
he's just wondrous.
Yeah, that phrase comes up a couple times in the Old Testament.
I don't know if it's an angel as much as it could be Yeshua.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's I think it's a Christophany or whatever. A
Yeah.
Misophony. It's like, because there are there's so many little clues like that there. Because he said, I mean, the I am thing is pretty interesting. That's not before Abraham, but that whole issue. But then then he says, the wonderful thing, seems like there's a Hebrew teaching on that that's pretty good about why do you ask my name for, it's wonderful. And then
Yeah, I've seen you play the video before. It is really good.
I mean, it doesn't have to be, but it's kind of like, it's like one of those things like, you call like an Easter egg, seems like to me.
Yeah,
sure.
Kids call those, but maybe some of that stuff gets overblown sometimes, but there's so many motivations for people to not be careful with those things. So, but it seems like there's enough to think we're supposed to think he's somebody that we find in the scripture. And so, I accept that, I guess I would say.
Yep. I think there's a lot of ties here.
Because he's kind of like a type in a way, like Samson himself. Like, I don't know, maybe like because when you put all the births together, like all the barren, like all the births that are like come up in, what is it, like it comes up around the Feast of Trumpets kind of thing. These weird births where the woman's barren or can't have birth.
It's a common theme for sure.
Yeah, and it's like you're supposed to be like gearing up to recognize the Messiah by all the different things, So it's God's providence, something like that. Like everything, when you start to look at everything, it's like all these little clues are pointing to the focus, which is, I don't know,
I'm
the
with
life
you.
of Jesus
I
or
think there's
whatever.
a lot of matters concealed within the Bible that you can study out and hash out. I forget, Chuck Missler references that one a lot. I don't remember. Do you, Deezer? About man, I can't even paraphrase the verse very well. Yeah.
It's a God conceals a matter, and it's the honor of kings to seek it out. That one.
Yes, that's the one I can't think of.
Yep.
That sermon from Missler has had such an impact on so many people. I've noticed. Like it did me too. Like to have a respect for. I mean, I don't even agree with everything. I mean, I'm not a
For sure.
dispensationalist. Unfortunately, that's very unfortunate in my mind. But that
I
so
never
many people
saw that coming, by the way. I just knew.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I watched a lot of Chuck Missler before I was like, oh man.
Like, did he just say
so,
that?
He's so brilliant in some areas, and then he says some things, and you're just like, wait, what? But
it's like it's weird because dispensational people will like it's complicated because I've noticed this with some people who are not dispensationalists, but it's like there's a respect for Israel, but maybe not in a completely proper way, like in today's era, like because let's put it this way. I think the respect for there's just so much like politics involved and like your replacement theology. It's like no, that's like a boon. It's like the question is with that question is modern Israel part of prophecy, and that's what's hard to deal with because you want to like not act like because so much of the church has totally lost its roots, and so then people will. It's kind of like in this last century. People just say Jesus is Jewish, kind of thing. It's like, they don't recognize the Hebrew roots of the faith. And then that gets taken advantage of by dispensationalists to be like, oh, are you replacement theology? So you don't respect the Hebrew roots. Like, no, I would actually argue that they don't respect the Hebrew roots of it in a certain way too. So that's kind of like a boon, just like trying to like shame people, into believing their view is how I look at it. Sorry.
I just wanted to read like 2 verses out of the book of Enoch.
For sure.
In regards to Yeshua. It says, for from the begin. Oh, I'm sorry. It's 1 Enoch 62. For from the beginning the Son of Man was hidden, and the Most High preserved him in the presence of his might, and revealed him to the elect. And the congregation of the elect and holy shall be sown, and all the elect shall stand before him on that day.
Who are the elect?
I'm assuming the resurrected saints.
For sure. It's interesting that I'd like to see what the original words are, that because that's obviously an English translation. I don't mean to complicate it. I agree with you that that's who's in view there. I would just say the way elect is used in the English, like regarding, because like Israel's the elect, and then that's adapted into those who believe in Messiah in the New Testament. It's kind of a complicated term because the way different theologies will use that or claim what it means. It's like, does that mean God elected them before they were born? You know, for like Romans 9, it's complicated. I think it just means God chosen. Just like
It's well, it says, and the congregation of the elect and holy shall be sown. And so in my mind, that's after the day of the Lord, and maybe some of the righteous that got to stay after the day of the Lord, and maybe they're sown out into the nations.
Okay, yeah.
It's just a thought. I've never really thought about it until you asked the question. And
yeah,
says, all the elect shall stand before him on that day. So, I mean, if you take Matthew, I've brought that up a lot, Matthew 25, where he does the sheep and goat separation. I mean, that's a day of judgment of the people that survived the day of the Lord. And it would make sense that he would sow them out.
Yep, you're absolutely right. But it's like the first resurrection from Revelation 20, Matthew 25, the ones that are ushered into the kingdom, you could say, from that story. Matthew 25, all three parables are.
Or the virgins with enough oil, if you will.
Yes, exactly.
I believe, like Steve, there's going to be 2 resurrections. Those virgins that were ready, that were already white and prepared, and those that are not. I don't know, just my 2 cents on that matter.
I was curious, Callie was talking about some stuff from Hebrews last time. I was curious where you were going to go with that. I think you had to go or something. Or we wouldn't let you talk because we blab too much. I'm going to not make that mistake this time.
My daughter couldn't be contained any longer. So she came inside and I had to stop studying to, feed her and things. Things that, 5-year-olds demand.
All right, I'm going to actually go through these last few verses here in Acts, and then we'll be done with the Torah portions, and then we can totally ride by trail, and then get this debate going between Kaylee and Jamie. I don't know what the subject is yet, but I'm kidding. 21:17 through 26. Here we are in Acts. And when we had arrived in Jerusalem, the brothers received us gladly. And on the following day, Paul, went in with us to Jacob, and all the elders came. And having greeted them, he was relating one by one what Elohim had done among the nations through his service. And when they heard it, they praised the master, and they said to him, "You see, brother, how many thousands of Yehudim there." Let me start over. "You see, brother, how many thousands of Yehudim there are who have believed, and all are ardent for the Torah. But they have been informed about you, that you teach all the Yehudim who are among the nations to forsake Moshe, saying not to circumcise the children, nor to walk according to the practices. What then is it? They shall certainly hear what you have that you have come. So do this, what we say to you. We have 4 men who have taken a vow. Take them and be cleansed with them, and pay their expenses, so that they shave their heads, and all shall know what they have been informed about you is not so. But that you, let me start over there. I'm not understanding what I'm reading. Take them and be cleansed with them, and pay their expenses, so that they shave their heads, and all shall know that what they have been informed about you is not so, but that you yourself also walk orderly, keeping the Torah. But concerning the nations who believe, we have written and decided that they should keep themselves from what is offered to idols, and blood, and what is strangled, and whoring." Then Shaul took the men on the next day, and having been cleansed with them, went into the set-apart place to announce the completion of the days of separation, until the offering should be presented for each one of them. Dun dun dun.
Is that it's an interesting way, like it seems like that made it sound like it was like there's a separate thing for the nations, which I don't accept if that is the case. Do you think that this is a point of contention, is it not, with the interpretation of this verse? Is it saying literally like that's all they need to do?
Now, which verse in specific are you talking about?
But concerning the nations who believe, we have written and decided that they should keep themselves from what is offered to idols and blood and what is strength. Some people try to say that's like makes no sense. They'll say that verse means that's all they have
because
to do.
they were practicing these ways in their worship ceremonies, and so he was like, take the Gentiles that are doing these practices first, tell them not to do these things, and then later they will hear, the Torah every Shabbat, and then they will slowly learn the rest of his ways.
Because they were trying to force the people to get circumcised. Isn't that what's going on here? Yeah. Well, that's a different account, but yeah, they were just trying to add to the Torah here.
Yeah, that's what people will say. Like, I don't know how you guys work all that stuff out. I would say it seems to me Paul is saying that God doesn't care about circumcision, but so much now, but that because there is like, I don't look at it like it's a totally new covenant, but I do think there is some sort of difference, obviously, because of what Paul says. So it has to be carefully looked at.
I see it more like if you have a glass of Coke and you drink it, you could refill it. It's still the same Coke. I don't know if that makes sense.
Sure.
Metaphorical sense.
So
yeah.
In Acts 15, it says, and some men came down from Judea and began teaching the brethren, unless you are circumcised according to the custom of Moses, you cannot be saved. So that's kind of the context, is that, and then later it also says that he's being, like, I think they call him the circumcision party. And so what they were doing is that they were coming up to all these new converts that were, switching over to Yeshua and then telling them, oh, no, you have to be saved first, or you have to be circumcised first to be saved, as if it's the entry point into the covenant, when that's not true. Like, people can be circumcised later when it's convicted on their heart. That's how I read it.
And I'm with you there, Kaylee. That's how I feel it.
And then in 15:10, it says, now therefore, why do you put God to the test by placing upon the neck of the disciples a yoke which neither our fathers nor we have been able to bear? And it's because they're just kind of adding. Here, let me look at all my notes.
Okay, so you guys are saying God still wants you to be circumcised. It's just not an entry point.
Yeah, that's how I look at it.
A necessary entry point.
Correct.
Yeah, it's like that's what they were telling them, is that you cannot be saved unless you're circumcised.
And then you should, and then
that's not the truth. It says later, it says, therefore, in Acts 15:19, it says, therefore it is my judgment that we do not trouble those who are turning to God from among the Gentiles, but that we write to them that they abstain from these contaminated by idols, which comes out of Exodus 34:15, and from fornication, which is Deuteronomy 22, I think 13 through 30, and from what is strangled, which is Leviticus 17:10 through 14, and from blood. For Moses from ancient generations has in every city those who preach him, since he is read in the synagogues every Sabbath. So they're saying, eventually with time, they're going to hear the law of God, and they're going to start, doing the instructions of God. So just make sure they get away from all those occultic practices first.
So it's just like kind of like immediately do not do this.
Right.
Like stop this immediately, sort of. I accept. I think that's kind of what it's saying too. Like these are like, it's kind of like if you find somebody who is coming in and they're fornicating, through the gate or whatever. You're like, dude, you stop that immediately. So it's like that makes sense. I would say that makes sense. I would also say that I can see that with the circumcision thing. I would wonder though, like, so this is where I struggle, because I do think it's like a continuation of the covenant, but at the same time it seems like, well, for instance, what would you say about, what do you think is going on in Hebrews 9:10, for example? Like, seems like that's like a point of him saying something like there are differences, mainly that like he seems like he's talking about certain things imposed on them until the time of Reformation. And it seems like it's certainly talking about certain things to do with the temple. And then I kind of, in my mind, I tie that to like the idea that the things that separated the Gentiles from coming near to God, like in the inner courts of the temple, like those things have come down. And then I would like to make one new man in Messiah. So it's like, what does that mean? What does that entail? What are the differences? That's where my mind goes, just to be clear.
What, Jamie, what do you make of Romans 8:2 then? And I guess, how do you define the Torah or the law of sin and death?
Oh, this is, I would take this to be the sin and death is the curse of the law. So like the death penalty for the breaking of the covenant. So I would take him using language of their disobedience of the covenant is, I think the whole framework of salvation through the death of Jesus is based on the covenant at Sinai. That was a covenant of obedience, which my covenant they broke. So I would say sin and death is not talking about the law. It's talking about the punishment that was justly coming, going to come down on them, something like that.
And so, I agree with you totally. And I think that's basically the only thing that's changed would be this here. Because he was the death sacrifice, he was the Passover lamb, and that's what Dustin says. I'm not saying thus say Yahuwah, but
people literally tell me that the law itself was sin and death, and that's like, Lord have mercy, because he literally says like, Romans 7:8 carefully read. That's like a critical thing. The thing where I think I differ from Hebrew roots is that there is. So like Galatians is like talking about justification and or sacrificial system. Like there's some sense I think you can't get away from the idea that there's a change of the priesthood in Hebrews and then like an allowance. Well, like, I'll just let you, I want to hear what you have to say about Hebrews like 9:10, and especially when you look at the context, because it's talking about the temple in the context of 9, like 9:1 through up leading up to verse 10 there. I don't know. I just like to hear what you guys think about it. Like, because it seems to me you have to say there's some differences in the covenant of some kind here. Like, but I'm open to hearing what you have to say about it.
And that's what led me to the 8:2 verse. About the difference of sin and death. I haven't seen where he's freed us from any other law in the Bible or anything else has changed. In my 2 cents on the matter, but I think
I prefer to think of it in that way. By the way, I do identify more with what you're saying than I would with like Christianity at large. But yeah, let me just read this and then tell me what you make of it, how you look at this.
Kaylee, did you already have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, I was reading the chapter just to make sure I could get the context. And like my perspective is that Yeshua is a mediator of a better covenant. And that we don't really receive the covenant. Like, we're not in the covenant now. That's how I look at it. We don't receive the covenant until you get your resurrected body. And Yeshua, the first fruits of the resurrection, he's already received the covenant, and he's able to minister it. I don't know if I'm using the right terminology right now, but like I see what's changed in chapter 9 is the Day of Atonement, where the high priest had to first do the sacrifice for himself and then the people before he could approach the Holy of Holies. And since Yeshua doesn't have sin inside of him, he was a spotless lamb.
That's funny, because so Seventh-day Adventists say that this is where everybody thinks Seventh-day Adventists are heretics, basically, is because of this Day of Atonement issue. Like, because they say they look at it like, Jesus made the atonement, and so people like misunderstand it, in my opinion. Like, no one's denying that Jesus made an atonement, but they also say it's like an antitypical Day of Atonement. So there's a sense where it like attaches to the second coming, and that part of the atonement is Christ ministering in the heavenly sanctuary. And so Christians don't like that idea because they want to like say, but there's so many issues with the whole Calvinism, like, did he purchase your salvation and you can't lose it, sort of thing. And that it gets all tied up in it. But it's like, yeah, like there is a sense where Jeremiah 31 like comes to full fulfillment at the second coming, and that the work of removing sin from the world isn't fully completed until, because right, there's still sin in the world, like something's still happening that's not done yet. That's what I always want to say to people. And so I hear what you're saying. Like, I kind of agree with the notion that some of these things aren't fully realized, and they won't be until the glorified body comes, sort of thing. However that
Well, it
works.
even says a new covenant he has made the first obsolete, but whatever is becoming obsolete and growing old is ready to disappear. It hasn't happened yet. It's future. And that's when you have the resurrected body, that's when you have the laws put on your heart, and you shall not sin again. So that's how I look at the covenant. And I didn't know that the Seventh-day Adventist believed that he was ministering in the heavenly tabernacle.
Yeah. I mean, it says he makes intercession for those that are being sanctified.
Yeah.
I mean, and it says it right here. And, the earthly set apart place, as if the second isn't earthly,
Right. So that's the idea.
That's how I've been reading the scriptures for like the past 2 years. It's been kind of a difficult topic to bring up and get discussion out of. So I think it's interesting. Like I said, I didn't know the Seventh-day Adventists believe that. Yeah,
that's one of the key things. Like they're really strong on the idea of like pointing out like the different typology of the tabernacle and like the wilderness, and how it like points to Christ's ministry. And so it's a weird like hybrid between Hebrew roots and Christianity, you could say, if you look at it that way. Like, so, well, I do see that. I think Jeremiah 31 is supposed to be saying it's fulfilled when Jesus ascends, right? And then he's like in the heavenly sanctuary. And I would say that's the one that comes down at the end of, at the end of Revelation 20. And so it's not that, like, the question is like, what's different in the sense of, it seems like Hebrews is saying that it's at least somewhat like inaugurated already, because he's like kind of like saying the ministry of Christ is better than the one they had on earth, and like that's already started because Jesus already ascended and then went into the holy place in the heavens or whatever. But
I would
mean,
say
like,
that it's better because we have the eternal high priest that will never sin, and that's what the whole scriptures was trying to find in the first place, was a priest that could follow God's instructions to the best of his ability, so that way he could mediate to the people and from God, or to God for the people, and make atonement for them. And the priesthood was always failing in that arena. And Yeshua came. He wasn't a priest on the earth until he died, and now he's our eternal priest that also understands what it's like to be in the flesh, and he can pour out the Spirit on people, and he can make atonement for people without first making an atonement for himself. I think that's what's changed.
Yeah,
exactly. For sure. And it says it right here, 13 through 15. For the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of a heifer, sprinkling the defiled, sets apart for the cleansing of flesh, how much more shall the blood of the Messiah, who through the everlasting Spirit offered himself unblemished to Elohim, cleanse your conscience from dead works to serve the living Elohim? And because of this, he is the mediator of a renewed covenant, so that death having taken place for redemption of the transgressions under the first covenant, those who are called might receive the promise of the everlasting inheritance.
You see, that's why I think that we're not in the covenant until the day of the Lord, when the when the dead in Christ rise first.
Gotcha.
And then those that are awake are changed in the twinkling of an eye. That's when I think you enter into the new covenant. Right now, it's like proleptically, we say it with hope and faith that you'll make it to that day.
Yeah, with the sin of the golden calf, the Levites ended up getting the priesthood instead of everyone else. So that was, in my interpretation, the laws that were added because of sin. And then now, once we go to the new covenant, it's obviously not the Levites that are going to be the priests, but he's got his kingdom of priests like they had in Exodus 19 before the golden calf.
Yeah, and that language is applied to believers, right? Your priests and kings,
right? And then
you'll sit on thrones with him in the heavenly sort of thing.
The whole thing with Romans 7 and being dead to the law and released from the husband and all that good stuff, that is like straight out of Deuteronomy 24. And the only thing that the law prevents is the woman from remarrying her original husband. So to get around that law means that you're remarrying your original husband. And if God was their original husband, I don't understand why people think that God would give something that wasn't perfect and it would need to be altered. His marriage covenant stays the same. We're remarrying the same person. Like, why would the covenant change? Why would you change your marriage vows if you're going to marry your original spouse? That doesn't make any sense.
I think the difference between how you see it and the way I was taught and how I would see it is like, what are those things added because of sins? Is it the sacrificial system, which is fulfilled in Christ, or is it more complicated than that? I guess is kind of the foundational difference, if there is one. Like, I'm open to. I think it's probably not as simple as I'm saying it there. Like, that it's just simply the sacrificial system, because I wouldn't want to deny that, like, believers are,
no, I could totally see that the sacrificial system is gotten rid of. Like, as far as like the sacrifices for sin, like all of the sin sacrifices, I could see those getting rid of, because we don't have an example of sin sacrifices. Even with Job, he offers sacrifices for his children in case they've sinned, but we don't know that it was like necessarily a sin sacrifice.
Well, what's going to happen in the millennial
don't know.
reign when the nations, I know that they're not going to have Satan there to tempt them constantly, but they're going to mess up because they're still going to be mortals. So the Levites are going to be reselected during the millennial reign when the New Jerusalem's down on the earth. At least that's how I view it. So I don't see sin sacrifices really going away until after Satan is thrown into the lake of fire, which would be after the millennial reign. That's just my
that's how you work that. I would say, like, I think everybody would agree that I would argue that sacrifices for sin are supposed to be wrapped up in Christ's death. But then I would say, it's difficult. I would just say, I don't think animals are going to die when everything's restored. Like, that's the whole purpose of history, is to like crush the rebellion against God, which is basically any kind of sin is like a faith issue. To me, that's what God is allowing evil is occurring, because he's working out the getting people to agree with him. And so the question would be, oh yeah, there you go.
We could have a lot less questions if Acts 21 would have gotten to continue before Paul got arrested. Like if it would have went through the sacrifices that Paul did in Acts 21, because in the Nazirite vow, one of the sacrifices is for sin. So if Paul would have got to go and finish what he was doing, and he got through like all of the sacrifices and then didn't do the sin sacrifice, like that would answer, that question. But
Daniel 9:27 is kind of the elephant in the room, as I've always argued, because if 9:27 is talking about Jesus, which I believe it is, think about what it says there. He takes the sacrifice and oblation away. So that's a big pivot for me. I do not see that as the Antichrist, because that verse is what actually proves Jesus is Messiah according to Scripture. And so it seems like, and when you look at what happened after that, God wasn't, I don't know, like when you look in the Talmud, like I don't see them wanting to like argue that Jesus took the sacrifices away, but they say like what's with them saying like before the temple was destroyed, they like record in there that like when they did the Day of Atonement sacrifice, it didn't turn red anymore. I mean, it didn't turn white.
Right.
And, like,
yeah.
all that stuff. So like, what does that mean?
Right. But like nowhere in the New Testament, when it's all talking about like in Acts 21 today, like James tells Paul to go make sacrifices to prove that he keeps the law, like that, and like we're post Pentecost. Paul's had the Holy Spirit thing. James has obviously got the Holy Spirit, and somehow they're still telling people to go make sacrifices. Like that makes absolutely no sense if the sacrifices have been gotten rid of. So the only one that I can logically think of would be the sin sacrifices, because that's the only thing that Hebrews talks about. And then the high priest changing, and the high priest is only for the Day of Atonement. Like the other priests can do everything else. That's the only reason that you need a high priest is for the Day of Atonement. So
Yeah,
if the only
that's
change is,
complicated.
if the only priest is, or the only change is the high priest, then it just kind of narrows things down.
Well, how do you think about the reason? Like, I don't know how you guys think of sovereignty and all that stuff, Christianese stuff, but like, seems like God takes away the temple. Like, what?
Oh,
do you
yeah.
do you think after Jesus rose from the dead that the early church was going, whatever you want to call it, the believing ones, do you think they went to do the Day of Atonement at the temple after Jesus rose and left? Like, did they go to the temple for the Day of Atonement?
That's one of those things that I wish they would put in the New Testament. Like, it would make things so much easier. And yeah, as far as I know, that they don't. So I don't know, man.
Yeah, I would want to say they certainly didn't because of what's written in Hebrews. But of course, that wasn't written in 32 AD or whatever year you think Jesus died. Like,
Right.
The temple still stood for 40 years. And
technically, the Torah says 3 times a year, all of the males will come to the temple. And that it's not the Day of Atonement. It's actually Sukkot.
Okay.
So, yeah, like
that's why I say I have to say
the Day of
there's some
Atonement
change,
was the Day of Atonement was the high priest's job. Like, okay. It didn't necessitate that the whole, every Israelite be there on that day.
Oh yeah, that's right, because he would have to go into the most holy place and sprinkle the blood or whatever, right? Isn't that how it works?
Yeah.
And we put bells on him and a rope around his waist or whatever. Is that one?
Dude, can you imagine? Like, you are the high priest, and yet you still got to tie a rope around your waist in case you screw up and they have to drag your corpse out of there. Like, just
wow. You guys, you've heard the stories about Ron Wyatt, like with Michael Rood, right? Have you heard that stuff?
Yeah.
Like he claimed, like, I have a hard time accepting this, but I leave it open-ended. I don't know what to make of it, but he claimed and I think Michael Rood talked about this one, but a lot of people don't know about this story, but like, supposedly, because he told the people in Israel that, because like, okay, so Ron Wyatt was the Seventh-day Adventist, but I think he had a few differences or whatever, right? Like, he was more, his view on Israel was a little more like Israel is significant, that they're back in the land than most Adventists would be. And so he has like, I can't tell for sure exactly. He seems to agree with all Adventist theology and talk like an Adventist. He believed in Ellen White and stuff like that was sent by God as a messenger. So things like that, beside the point. But he claimed that, like, he adds the question, like, can I touch the Ark of the Covenant? Because that's a question of, like, most Christians, I think Adventists too, would say, because the temple veil broke, like something's going on there with the temple. Like, God ripped exposed the holy place, right? And like when Jesus dies, and
well, like, we don't know what veil ripped. Like, honestly, if they're talking about the veil ripping and everybody noticed it, I would assume that it's the veil on the outside of the temple that separated like kept the Gentiles out.
Oh, okay. I've never heard that, so that's new to me.
Because like the veil going into the Holy of Holies, the only guy that's going to see that is the high priest, and he's only going to notice once a year.
True. And not to mention, but like, what do you make of the ark not being in there?
Well, they lost that like long before. Like,
what does that suggest? That's a huge question in my mind. Like,
well, I apparently the red ribbon was still turning white even without the Ark of the Covenant. So, like,
right. Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, Yeah, like literally walking by faith, not by sight. We don't even have the Ark of the Covenant, but we're still going to do the Day of Atonement sacrifice.
There's got to be meaning to that,
and
though.
it's still turned white. You know what I mean? Like,
Right, like a
faith,
mercy that's going,
just
some kind of mercy.
doing what you can with what you got.
Right, but like, why is it? Why? What is that? It's got to signify something, though. Like, not. I'm not jumping to any conclusions about it. I'm just saying, like,
oh yeah, I agree.
because like, if the Ron Wyatt story is true, which makes a lot of sense to me, he sprinkled it.
The covenant was only needed for the Day of Atonement sacrifice. So,
which
once again, we're in the same boat where everything is pointing to just the Day of Atonement sacrifice and possibly sin sacrifices.
So, do you reject?
Have you seen the pictures of Ron Wyatt's?
I have, yeah.
Ark of the Covenant, because when I saw him, maybe you've seen some better evidence. I didn't. The pictures that I saw on a documentary I watched on him, they did not look convincing to me.
No,
it
they're
looked
totally
like
not.
anyone could have made that and then like kind of filled it in and been like, look, this is the Ark. And I don't know.
Sure, it's an unbelievable story. It's an unbelievable story, but what do you make of the premise of? Because, like, to me, the idea that did Jesus sprinkle the Ark of the Covenant with his blood? Like, what does that mean? And like, is that something that makes sense to you? Like I don't accept it as true, but is what's difficult for me is I do believe he found a bunch of stuff. A lot of the evidence is overwhelming for like Sodom and Gomorrah and the where the Mount Sinai is, stuff like that. I can't not believe that's the right Mount Sinai location, for instance. Like, for me, like, when you look at all the evidence, it's like, if this isn't it, then it doesn't exist. Because like the rock at Horeb, he didn't even find the rock at Horeb. Somebody else did after the fact. Like, he's saying this is this Mount Sinai. Then other people come along and, what do you know? There's the rock at Horeb, and it's like, that is the rock at Horeb, or it doesn't exist, as far as I can tell. Like, do you guys agree with that? Or, I mean, have you looked at that?
It looks pretty convincing on that aspect. Yeah, that's what makes the Ark of the Covenant story so difficult, is that the Mount Sinai, the rock at Horeb, like, that stuff seems as legit as it can be.
Yeah, the wells are still there, and like, when if you carefully follow the path according to Scripture, like the cave of Elijah is there, right? And then if you like go up there and you look down, just like it describes what you would see, what Moses would see coming down the mountain where the rock, where the golden calf would have been. It just makes you can't fake that.
And so, Paul has his road to Damascus thing, and then where does he go for 3 years? Arabia.
And sorry, Arabia is Saudi Arabia. The arguments that the dude, let me tell you this.
I mean,
I've pestered some of these scholars that laugh it off, and like, they are found wanting. They have no evidence against it.
Like, what? Abraham makes the same journey. Like everybody makes that journey.
All they say is like,
they just changed the name. You know, it's Horeb, it's Sinai, it's whatever, but it's the same place.
Oh, in the pictures, like, it's like, first of all, Ron Wyatt didn't find that. Like, he was saying that was Sinai, and he didn't know about the rock at Horeb. It's Jim and Penny Caldwell that found it. So like, that confirms it as far as I'm concerned. And all the other details.
Did Ron Wyatt find the cave? The cave that's
it's on Mount Sinai. I think so. At least eventually he did, or whatever. His original evidence was confiscated when he first found this place. It's like, and like, I do think he found. I do think that's Noah's Ark. I think people just expect too much. Like, if that seems like the right place, it doesn't have to be, but
yeah. And then just the fact of getting busted in Saudi Arabia by the Saudis and being able to like get home. You know what I mean? Like, that's just
right.
In that time period, that would be like going to North Korea and then just letting you go free.
Yeah, because then the question is like, why? Like, you can ask all sorts of questions like, look, I don't accept everything, all the claims, just because there's not enough evidence. But at a certain point, you go like, okay, so like, does God just like let people find all that stuff? Like, and what does that mean?
Well,
does that mean everything he says is true? No, absolutely not.
Whenever the Ark of the Covenant got taken, the Gentiles were able to carry it around and move it from city to city, and they didn't die immediately. I mean, they may have got plagued and stuff.
What is that?
Like, they didn't die as soon as they touched it, like the Israelites did. You know, people.
Well, you know what I was going to say about this. What I was going to originally say was that one of the stories is that, and Michael Rood says this is the case, and you know, a lot of the things there's not evidence, so I'm not going to say it's true. I would just say they went to try to get it out. So apparently, and like they sent the Jew, because he told the Jews or whatever, however you want to say it, he told the people in charge, right, of the religious stuff.
You can speak plainly here. We all know what you mean.
Okay, so yeah, so like the story goes that they sent their priests, you know, that are like, it would be who, if they rebuild the temple in there, the guys that would be the people to do the ceremonies and all that. Yeah, they sent them in there in their garbs and everything, and to get the Ark of the Covenant, and they like started to take it out, and they died, like they didn't come back out.
Yeah,
and so they called Ron White claims that they sent him down there, and he said they were dead. And he said their eyes were crossed, like they died, like from, like they had a seizure or a brain hemorrhage or something, right? They're all just laying there cross-eyed dead or something. And like he had to like, that they basically sent him. And then he said he was gonna like, he stopped and thought they're dead because they touched the ark or whatever, right? And then he thought, can I touch that? Can I touch it? And he's thinking, and then he said like, well, I'm you know, under the Messiah, so like I can touch it, is what he said. And like they weren't under the Messiah, so they couldn't touch it still. That was kind of his thought. That's what he was claiming. I mean, that's outrageous, right? I mean, but there's all sorts of questions you could ask about that. But he had to like, and they pulled the bodies out. And supposedly Michael Rood says that's true. I mean, that seems outrageous. I mean, this is where like reality meets your faith or whatever. I don't know what to make of it, man.
Yeah. I don't know. In that sort of situation, I like, you know, like I can see Mount Sinai, I can see the rocket Horeb, like that. I can see Sodom and Gomorrah. Like I can't see the ark, so that one's definitely harder to swallow for sure.
But think about this. Like, why didn't anybody find Mount Sinai? You have to ask the question, like, was God with him, right? And like God is with people and they sin, so like people can lie and like God doesn't abandon people. But then it's like, it's kind of like the prophet thing. Like if someone's a prophet, does that mean everything they ever said is true? Like they don't lie, they're sinless? I mean, like, what are you going to, this is where like, obviously you don't say, well, everything Ron White says is therefore correct. Like, but would God let somebody making stuff up find all these amazing things? And then if he did, then does that mean everything he found is real? Or like, would God let him tell lies about other things? It's like, how do you even think about that sort of interaction? It seems to me God wouldn't let some total sham liar find this stuff. Like you'd have to say if he found half the stuff he says he did, which, you know, God was with him, right? You would say, and then that was God revealing that to him, like a faithful servant. But then you don't want to say everything he ever said was true, you know, because of that. I wouldn't either anyway. I wouldn't assume that, but that's a difficult issue. I struggle with that.
For sure. Yeah.
I can't say everything he says is gospel, but I also can't say, I'm also completely convinced that he found real things that God kept hidden. So I can't deny that either. But I'm not going to say therefore everything he says is true. It's just, I don't know what to do with that. I'll leave it there.
I can answer that for you if you want.
Yeah, please.
You have to come here and drink some Kool-Aid that I have.
Yeah, just keep
the Kool-Aid.
Keep listening to whatever Dustin tells you.
Oh my! I had to go there. You took the bait.
I've asked like 3 different scholars that are like, well, you know, they have they know what they're talking about, like David Falk, David Rowe, and a few others, like several times. I'm like, how can you guys reject this Sinai thing? Because like people aren't accepting it. Some do, some don't. Everybody who goes there ends up accepting it. I'll tell you that much. Different people, you know, people dismiss it for different reasons. Oh, he's a Seventh-day Adventist, so it can't be true. Or I mean, even Seventh-day Adventist archaeologists don't accept it for like a few reasons. Like it's too far away from Egypt, and it says they got there in 3 days. That's like the main reason people won't accept it. But these people don't accept that there was walls of water on each side of them when they went through the Red Sea. So, you know, they act like they have good reason not to accept it. But it's like, dude, at a certain point, hard evidence is like hard to deny. I would just say, all the scholars I talked to, they seem like they really didn't look at it closely. They're like, well, it's too far away, and they have their pet theories, and it's like you suddenly realize that like all those scholars are like worth listening to. It's like they're just another person like anybody else. I'll just say it that way. I'm not impressed with their arguing against it. Let's put it that way.
I really want to see if I can get you a 2-hour interview with Steve Mutria. Like, I think that he would be the only guy I know that could possibly keep up with you with like Daniel and Revelation and stuff.
I don't know that much. There's certain things I know. I don't understand the history very well. As far as if you watch Chris's thing last night talking to that guy, I think it was pretty interesting.
I caught like 20 minutes maybe before I went to bed. I was so beat yesterday. I stayed up till like 3 a.m. working on the truck, and that was whenever you had your show going with CJ on it. And then I drove for, I don't know, what felt like 5 hours yesterday. So yeah, I was pretty beat. I went to bed early.
Oh yeah, hey, so what do you do with Hebrews 9:10? I'm curious how you guys read that. Like, what is it talking about there? I'll be quiet, and I want to hear what you guys just make of it, if you don't mind. If you're
that was the one talking about the high priest, right?
I guess I need to pull this up. It'd be
if you would. Specifically Hebrews 10. I mean, the context is important too, but mainly, like, what is he talking about there?
Yeah, I was outside trying to listen on the laptop, so I didn't catch the whole thing. But I thought Dustin and Kaylee answered. But I'll go ahead. I don't mind.
Yeah, like particularly verse 10 with the context in mind. But like, I would read verse 10 and then read the context leading up to it, because I take that to mean certain aspects of the. I would ultimately tie it into like kind of like Peter's vision about all men being clean. It has something to do with the outer courts and the Gentiles to some degree, right? Okay, that's an interesting translation. So the way I can see that being the translation, I would say, like, it says this was imposed on them until the time of Reformation is what the King James says. But I'm open to a different way of reading that. But
yeah, it's the like the high priest had to like make a sacrifice for himself and then like switch clothes after taking a bath, and then he could go in and make the Day of Atonement sacrifices. You know, so he had to go through his own like stuff before he could go in and make atonement for everybody else, where Jesus doesn't have to do that.
I'm thinking this through. What is it? So you're saying
it's got to be in like the first like 7 chapters of Leviticus, Dustin. Let's go there.
So verse 9 says they had to do these things over and over. It sounds like to me it's saying, let me give you my interpretation. It's saying what the priests had to do yearly over and over again, but it couldn't perfect them. Jesus does once for all sort of thing. And then that kind of parallels this here where it's saying the time of Reformation, make matters straight. I'm trying to think of what the difference would be. I mean, ultimately, it's saying the same sort of thing. As to his conscience, so you're more putting that to just the high priest role, not the system itself, I guess is what you're saying. Something like that.
Yeah, because like that was like all that stuff listed in 9:10 is only talking about the priestly stuff. And then since it's talking about the high priest and entering into the most holy place or the most set apart place, however you want to look at it, like that's definitely the Holy of Holies, and that's only entered on the Day of Atonement. And then
would you definitely say though that
go through extra stuff to be able to do that?
Don't you think though that this is saying essentially that what the high priest had to do to atone for the sins of the people once a year, Jesus does once for all? It seems like it's saying to me.
Right. Yes, I agree. But we don't know what it was supposed to be like originally. You know what I mean? Because like originally the head of the household was the priest. You know, like whenever they get to Exodus 19, there's already priests. They've already made
That's a good point. That's a
they've
great point.
already made the sacrifice on Passover, and there's priests already at Exodus 19. And then you get to Exodus 20, they tell God to stop talking, they make Moses go listen, and then what is it, like Exodus 24 or something like that, you get the golden calf. And then the Levites are instated as priests because they're the only ones that will rise up and, you know, kill all the people that worship the golden calf.
Yeah, we read that not that long ago in a portion.
Yeah.
David was with us. It was a good one.
Like a week or two ago, maybe 3.
It's interesting how you could ask the question.
So the priesthood gets changed from whatever it was originally whenever they left Egypt, gets changed to only Aaron and the Levites can be priests.
Right.
And then,
that's definitely going on.
So that automatic, and then them like rejecting just God talking to them. You know, the people, like God was speaking to the people, and the people rejected that system and said, no, we want Moses to go be our mediator for us. And
correct.
God, and, you know, and so then
which works into the type of Messiah too, though.
Right. Like, you know, he knows everything. He knows what we're going to do. So just because we did that doesn't necessarily mean that it's good. It just means that he planned for our mistake.
Yes.
So, exactly. So was Moses the predecessor for the intercessor?
Yeah.
Right. You know,
that's God. Yes. See, God was
because in Exodus 19, you know, there was no mediator. It, like Moses was kind of a mediator, but you know, like once they get to the beginning of Exodus 20, it's just God talking to his people.
Right.
And then they
doesn't that tie into the king too? Like King David, like they want a king.
And then now that we have Jesus, there is no mediator in between us and God. It's just like it was in Exodus, you know, 20 before they told God to stop talking.
That's interesting.
So it's always just God. God is in the restoration business. He's not in the going out and getting something new business. Like God just fixes stuff because the stuff that he has is perfect.
Think about the implications of that. Like you see that theme, like, okay, you see it where like with the like what you just described. And then you see that when like God's like, they want a king and God gives them a king, which ends up being like, you know, the king is Jesus. So it's like God's like, God doesn't want to do it that way in a sense. Right. And then, but then he does. And then that the way that works is like points to Christ, which is Messiah, whatever, how you want to say it. You know, it's like, what does that suggest? It's like, it's almost like, so the question is, we end up needing that thing we ask for sort of idea. And it's almost like God's saying, it's like, and it kind of reminds me of when it says like, you know, I don't want your sacrifices. I want you to take care of the widow sort of thing. Right. Like those scenes. And like, there's several places where it's like, so the question is like, what is, you know, you could say that some people say that the new covenant or the renewed covenant is a renewed covenant that how it was originally with Abraham, right? Like the promises to Abraham. I'm starting to see, I'm just thinking out loud here. I'm just like seeing that there certainly is God's ways, and then things are added like to deal with the people's rebellion. And then God kind of is like, I wish you would just do it right, but I'm going to add stuff to like take care of it. And then that all those things end up being like what types Jesus, you know, it's like what to make of that. I'm not sure. I'm just thinking out loud. I don't know. It's weird how it works out. It's like what at the end of the day, it's like God knows what the people are going to do in a sense, right? And he like plans for it. But what is that underlying theme where it's saying like, why do you want a king like the other nations? And then he gives them what they want. And then and then it ends up typing Jesus. But I'm not saying God didn't want to send Jesus. I'm just saying like, it's an interesting, like kind of dynamic there. And you see that over and over in the covenant with the things added because of sins, whatever that means. And then you see that with like the king, them having a king, which ends up bringing David, who's a messianic figure type, you know, so it's complicated. What are the things, like, what is it? Once everything's fixed, what's left that God's going to have instituted? And then like, that kind of gets to the question of like, what Christianity gets wrong too. Like ultimately I'm going to say it is about God's law. And what people miss is that that is the love of God. But then it's like, which things were added to deal with our rebellion that won't be there in the eternal estate, you could say. That's kind of like the differences
Yeah,
maybe
I get what
between
you're saying.
us. Yeah, it's interesting. It's hard to work out. I don't want to say the Christianity at large is like completely. I mean, God promised that he would work in people that love Jesus. I'll say it that way, really generally. You know, like,
Yeah.
God has to be in there somewhere. Like, I don't think they're just totally don't love God. You know what I mean? But like, it's certainly all messed up, and it kind of is a picture of what was going on with the Israelites too. So, but God's working it out. I don't know. It's easy for me. It's easy to be like, you know, God has no part of that thing, because people, like, they don't care about the law. They totally get it wrong. But then I'm not going to say God's not working through history either. Like, I hope.
Well, you know, God knew that we'd be scattered to the four corners of the earth. So he knew that this would happen to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of predicted the second Exodus before the first one had even finished.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to go back when you guys were talking about the Ark of the Covenant. It took me a little bit to find something. But
Go
it's
ahead.
in the Apocalypse of Baruch, R.H. Charles version. I think it's chapter 4. And Baruch, he goes, I don't know here, I'll just read it. And lo, suddenly a strong spirit raised me up and bore me aloft over the walls of Jerusalem. And I beheld, and lo, 4 angels standing at the 4 angles of the city, each of them holding a lamp of fire in his hands. And another angel began to descend from heaven and said unto them, Hold your lamps and do not light them till I tell you. For I am first sent to speak a word to the earth, and to place in it what the Lord the Most High has commanded me. And I saw him descend into the Holy of Holies, and take from thence the veil and the holy ephod, and the mercy seat, and the 2 tables, and the holy raiment of the priest, and the altar of incense, and the 48 precious stones, wherewith the priest was adorned, and all the holy vessels of the tabernacle. And he spake to the earth with a loud voice, Earth, 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 hear the word of the mighty God, and receive what I commit to thee, and guard them until the last time, so that when thou art ordered, thou mayest restore them, so the strangers may not get possession of them. For the time comes when Jerusalem also will be delivered up for a time, until it is said, that it is again restored forever. And the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up. I think I read this before. I don't know, some months back.
You think God took them home early? That's what I hear all the time. I would just gasp.
Well, from what I read, he took all the holy, you know, anything from the holies of holies, and he placed it inside the earth so that no one else could get possession of them. And
Right.
it says, and until the last time, so that when thou art ordered, thou mayest restore them, so the strangers may not get possession of them. And Baruch used to be in our Bibles. I don't know about Apocalypse of Baruch, but it used to be in our Bibles like 140 years ago.
What is that? What do you think? You could take that like literally, like it sounds like, or you could just be saying it that it was hidden and put away, sort of thing. It's interesting. Like you could understand that. Depends how literally you want to take it.
I kind of take it literal.
I tend to as well. That's the intention of the author.
I think you can get in trouble if you start just slapping, allegory and metaphors on top of everything. I think usually the Bible tells you when it's a vision, and then it usually interprets it for you.
Well, I would say it's like an idiom, though. Like, I'm with you on that. Totally with you. I would just say, like, if God said, like, I'm going to make the earth swallow up my holy vessels. Like, I know it doesn't say it like that, but, like, does that mean that could mean it could be an idiom for, like, I'm going to hide it in the earth. Like, it's not totally denying the literal intention of what it means, right? I just mean like an idiom in the sense of, like, you can, like, that's just a figure of speech for saying he's going to bury it so that no one can find it. It means the same thing. It's just like, or should we take that as like literally there's an earthquake and they fall in there and they rattle down the hole and then the earth swallows it up literally.
The whole house of Korah went in, you know.
Yeah, I take that to be literally that they Indeed.
So I
It
mean,
gets a
so
little bit
we don't
foggy
have
though, right?
other
Like
places-
language. So, sorry.
We don't have other places, you know, to show that he's did it before. So I guess it doesn't really matter either way. Either the angel could have had the earth open up and then he placed them inside, or I just highly doubt an angel sitting out there with a shovel and pick digging a hole and
Yeah,
picking all
or
the
like-
vessels right before they get ransacked.
Yeah, right. Right, because like it's in like the book of Revelation, I think an angel flying through the midst of heaven is just saying like it's a message that goes to that everybody receives. Like we don't have to literally think an angel like a person in a white robe is flying. Like, you know what I mean? It gets a little bit pedantic. Like, does the earth swallows up something? Does that mean the earth like a mouth grows and it has teeth in it and it like nom nom nom? You know what I mean? Like that's where like reality and metaphor meet. You know, it's saying. It's just difficult with language sometimes, and yeah, I hate
better
it.
even have had a tongue too. Better have been a tongue.
Yeah. It made that noise too, like a giant tongue. Like in the teeth, you can hear them go.
Nom nom nom. That was perfect.
Nom nom nom. Sorry, I'm retarded.
But yeah,
Not
I mean,
at
like
all.
the angel that we read in the Torah portion today, he looked like a man. You know, like that's exactly how they described him.
Well, I think in Enoch it says that angels have the capability of taking on any form that they choose.
Shapeshifters.
Yeah, essentially like a shapeshifter. And then
right, yeah, the
obviously,
two people
you know,
didn't even know that it was like an angel until he went up with the fire of the sacrifice. Like, right?
Yeah, I just think it's good for people to realize, like, if you like, we fill in it, like, we make it magical, and the magic isn't necessarily in like the, you know, the supernatural, like seeing something necessarily always. I'm just saying, like, if you went back in time and saw Paul writing his letters, like he wasn't, you know, there wouldn't have been like this bright light in the room and he was like, you know, in a trance. And,
yeah,
like,
in a trance, like, yeah.
It's just a guy writing. It's God's providence that matters, not as much the magical part of it, in the sense of, if you get what I'm saying. I'm not saying it isn't an act of God. And I'm not saying that we should turn everything into like an explanation, a scientific explanation. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, that's where I'm at with stuff. Like, when the Red Sea parted, was there, like, it says there's a strong wind, but then I would also want to say, look, it says there was walls of water. I take that to be straightforward. I would just say, in every case, we don't, you know, I just think our faith should be in God, not on the.
Man, I wanted to mention that with your show with CJ the other night. And hardening Pharaoh's heart, like, all of the plagues were against like the gods of Egypt. Like, they directly had a god that dealt with everything that they experienced in the plagues. And
by the way, you teed me up too. I apologize for not hitting the ball, because with the Jeremiah 18 reference there. I totally messed that up.
But like, you know, all it would take is, you know, God telling Moses, oh yeah, okay, I'll, you know, relent this plague or whatever. And then the plague relents, and then one of the priests would come in and talk to Pharaoh and be like, oh yeah, we, you know, just did a sacrifice to whatever God was over, you know, that plague. And yeah, he was cool with it, you know, like that. It's that easy to harden Pharaoh's heart. Like, all he needs to hear is, oh, you know, you went and made, you know, atonement with our gods. Cool. Like, now I don't have to listen to this other strange god. Like, it wouldn't be that hard, you know?
Yeah, that did not go how I wanted it to. It's like, look, whenever you can go to the Old Testament to look for examples of what he's talking about, do it. And like, it's not talking about the philosophical nature of God's, you know, stuff. It's literally just talking about with the clay thing. It's, you know, it's like, scriptural way to read that is go back and see what they're talking about. Like, the clay was messed up in God's hands. It's not saying that God messed up the clay. It's like he's saying that, like, they rebelled, and then he can do with that messed up clay whatever he wants. It's not that he messed it up. They messed it up. And it's like, that's where the analogy comes from in Jeremiah. It's like, it's not saying God messed up the clay. It's saying he can do what he wants with bad clay. They're the ones that are bad, right? Something like that. Would you say?
Yeah, that's where I was going with it. But yeah, I'm not the guy that actually works with clay.
they find, that's the thing though. Like if you have the presupposition of a Calvinist, you're going to say, well, God's sovereign though. And like, are you saying God didn't know they were going to mess up? It's like, no, no one's saying like, God found himself with messed up clay and he's taken by surprise. That's what they're going to go to. They're going to say like, well, how, are you saying God found himself with this bad clay and then he had to like, oh crap. I would say, yeah, that's kind of what it's saying. It's not, you don't have the right to, because then it gets down to like, what are you saying? God was with them. It's just like with the Adam and Eve. It's like, look, the text wants you to think that they went against God's will. That's what the text is
I mean,
teaching.
he's obviously a master sculptor, and the clay wouldn't cooperate with his sculpting. It's not his fault. Like, it's the clay's fault. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he's going to do, and he is. That's the thing. They're right in the sense that God's in charge and he's not doing evil things. But to then say that, it's like they're always just going to go back to like, well, what? God didn't know they're going to do that. And it's like, well, he set up everything from the beginning. And it's like, well, dude, are you saying God can't make stuff better than, like, I always want to ask them, like, so do you think we can make things equal to humans, like with AI and robots eventually, like when we get enough technology, we just keep advancing?
Yeah, I wanted to get into that too, because I mean, at this point, we've got AI that create AI that then go on to build robots. Like we literally.
Right. Is he saying God can't do better than that?
Right. Like we already have creations that are building creations that are building creations. Like that's like 4 generations right there. Like
it's like they're saying God
generation.
Yeah. It's like, let the mystery be in like our decisions. If God can have a free will, why can't we?
Right. That's the real power, being to orchestrate free will chaos into the perfect plan. Like that is the ultimate
free will and
right?
destiny kind of like intertwined, He's going to use our free will because he knows what we do before we do it as part of his master plan. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if he knows what buttons to press to, on Pharaoh, surely he can know what guy is going to write down what words that are, that he's going to like. You know what I mean? Like, I have no problem.
I try to be fair because I think Calvinists point out a lot of interesting stuff that people like don't want to see, like with Job and stuff like that. It's a critical one. It's like, no, God sees fit. Like I would say it's difficult with like what it even means to determine somebody. It's like, yes, God is actively making it so he responds in a certain way. You could say that, like, he knows he can make you do stuff by manipulating you in the sense of like putting things in your path so like, we shouldn't say God won't interfere with people's free will. He absolutely will to intervene. I would just say, does that suggest therefore everything is that way? And I don't think the text is suggesting that. It doesn't want us to say that. Like it wants us to say it's not God making, setting us up for sin. But in some weird sense, you could say like God sees it coming. He is setting it up. But when you go take that down too far, it's literally saying like, well, did God want us to fall? I want to say no. I'm going to say no. That's where it really comes down to. Is like, because what did Adam say to God? He's blamed it on his wife. And like, was that appropriate? I would say no. You're supposed to take responsibility, although that is a factor, right? His wife influenced him. And then Eve says, God looks to her and it's like, you can see them all standing there in a line, right? And then Eve's like, well, it's not my fault. It's the snake's fault. And like, is that true? Well, yeah, it influenced her. So he has a part to play in it, but is she innocent then? And then the question you could ask is, that's where the story stops. And I think this is a great example to kind of make the point. It's like, then the snake, she blames the snake, and then God punishes the snake, but they didn't get off the hook, right? They get punished too. Death. He takes away.
Yeah, like everybody was held accountable there.
Yeah, because if Calvinism's true, the snake could have then said, well, what would he say? Well, you made me God. It's the God's fault. And then like, is that true?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that would be my logical next statement if I was a Calvinist.
Yeah, the snake would say, well, you're the God, and then the buck stops there, and then it's like, wait a minute. But then that would be not, is it God's fault, is the question. And no, the snake's a prick. That's how I like to say it.
It says James 12 through 15, it said, blessed is a man who perseveres under trial. For once he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him. Let no one say when he is tempted that I am tempted by God, for God cannot be tempted by evil, and he himself does not tempt anyone. but each one is tempted when he is carried away and enticed by his own lust. Then when lust has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and when sin is accomplished, it brings forth death. Do not be deceived, my brethren. And so obviously we see him testing
Which verse is that? What verse?
James 1:12 through 15.
Yes. I'm making a video now.
And that whole chapter
That's
is on
great.
testing their faith.
That is great.
1 Corinthians 10:13, you could throw on top of that too, right? Real quick, because that's, to me, James 1 and this verse make it clear that. Sorry, go ahead, Callie. Sorry.
God tests Abraham, so he is able to test your faith, but he doesn't tempt you, from my understanding.
Yes, I agree. There's a sense where you could say you're being tempted and God allows it, but he doesn't directly tempt you, is what that verse says to me. And then we throw this verse on there. It's like he allows you. I like to say it this way. I heard a guy say this once, and I really like it. He's like, he proved Abraham. He proved Job. God's like proving you. And I think that's what the great delusion is in 2 Thessalonians. He's also going to prove the wicked for what they are. He's demonstrating, he's pulling a remnant of people who trust him, and he's proving them to end the rebellion. And part of including in that is proving the wicked for what they are, which is what the great delusion is for. In second, he sends them strong delusion so that they believe a lie. He's not tempting them. He's proving them for what, because that's what he's wanting to demonstrate. In the end, the mark of the beast is like the last test, and he'll prove and then that's why the wicked are destroyed at the end of the 1,000 years. They've been proven for what they are, and that demonstrates it finally when they're destroyed. The fire comes down out of heaven and consumes them. That's how I look at it. All that stuff ties together. God's proving people, and he's saying, come to me, and those who do, he'll prove, and he'll refine them.
I got a question for you superhero fans. If you're a superhero, like I don't know, you're the son of a superhero, and your dad says you're not going to die. You're going to live to be 88. You're not going to die until you're 88. You're going to have many, many children. Hearing that from age 3 to 5, 8, 10 years old, you may start to get a big head. You may start to experiment with it. You may think you're invincible. You may think you're God. This prophecy must come true. So with Abraham telling Isaac, your seed, my seed, you're the first, your seed is going to be like the stars of heaven. Maybe he got a big head. It's like, what are you going to do? Kill me if I rebel? And he's like, God says, yeah, go kill him. Go show him. Because don't forget, when the angel appeared, just when he was ready to slit his throat, Isaac would have seen this angel as well. And of course, the ram as the sacrifice. So he's going up there like, you're going to kill me? Where's the sacrifice, Abraham? We got the wood. Come on. You think I'm the sacrifice? Come on. I ain't going to die. I have to fulfill this prophecy. My seed will be like the stars, the sands of the sea. How are you going to kill me? Yeah. Where's the sacrifice, Father? Oh, the Lord will provide himself a sacrifice. And it's like, yeah, right. This barren mountain up here with ain't nothing on it but me, you, and wood. I think I get the idea. Let's see what goes down. And then he additionally sees the angel stop his father. It's not like his father suddenly stopped and says, you know what? I can't do this, and it's because of the power of God that I can't do it. That would not be a good sign. He physically saw that exact same angel Abraham saw. And the horns tooting in the background confirm I'm telling the truth.
What's the question, Mike? What are you saying? Are you saying
something related to what you were saying on earlier?
I think that's a really interesting perspective because the angel visits Isaac's wife and says, you're going to have Jacob and Esau, but I need you to give the blessing to, Jacob. And Isaac doesn't. He gives it to Esau, even though he knew before they were born which one he was supposed to bless. You know what I mean? Right? Like, in Isaac's mind, he blessed Esau. He didn't. He was tricked, even though he knew before the kids were born which one he was supposed to bless. So he was literally being disobedient on there. Like, that's willful disobedience. It's like pure rebellion, honestly.
Okay,
Well, I think he knew that.
Mike, the way I understand it too is that, so the way I always imagine it is like Isaac's like a willing little trooper, and Abraham's stressed out, and Isaac's kind of picking up on it, but he's obedient. And then Abraham is like confused, but he's going to do what God says, and he's about to do it, and he's just this is how I'm imagining it. Like, what's wrong with that? Or answer Yahoo. I don't care. I want to throw that in there. I'm just being honest.
No, like I'm with you. Like that's how I looked at it before. So I'm kind of, that's why I was taken kind of by surprise with Mike's little story there. That's an interesting perspective. But with going over, what is that, 1 Corinthians 20 or whatever, with Aestheo, that predestined, or I don't even remember what the verse is, but it goes back to the Isaac and Jacob thing. And yeah, like Isaac should have known from early on who he was supposed to bless, and yet they still had to trick him to get Jacob the blessing. So there's something going on there for sure.
I think, are you mixing some people? Are you mixing my brain up? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had Abraham,
Isaac had a Jacob and Esau. So Isaac's the second.
Right. But
so when Isaac's getting taken up the mountain, there is no Jacob and Esau yet.
Yeah, so don't.
Yeah, there isn't. No.
Yeah, so don't forget.
It's just Abraham and his son, his one son so far, right?
Yeah. But I'm just saying, later on in his life, it's pretty clear that Isaac is rebellious. So
okay, yeah.
Mike's story is an interesting take on when that rebellion could have started.
That's okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I would say I have always imagined it like Isaac's still young, and so he's probably obedient, and just how much he knows is going on is hard to say. He kind of is just obedient to his father, and Abraham's like, I imagine him being all stressed out, not knowing what the heck God's telling him to do this. Somehow he knows it's God, and then he's like, but that's not necessarily the case.
Right. It does seem like Abraham at least knows that God has the power of life and death, and so even if he kills his son, like, they're both coming back down the mountain. Like, it does seem like that perspective.
It says in Hebrews that Abraham knew that he could raise him. I think I'd have to look where it's at.
Yeah, I don't think that made him willing, just totally willing to kill his son, though. In the actual story.
Yeah, I don't think it made it easier.
But in Jubilees chapter 19, it starting in 14, it says the youths grew. This is talking about Jacob and Esau. And Jacob learned to write, but Esau did not learn, for he was a man of the field and a hunter, and he learnt war, and all the deeds were fierce. And Abraham loved Jacob, but Isaac loved Esau. And Abraham saw the deeds of Esau, and he knew that in Jacob should be his name, and seed be called. And he called Rebekah and gave commandment regarding Jacob, for he knew that she too loved Jacob more than Esau. And he said unto her, My daughter, watch over my son Jacob, for he shall be in my stead on the earth, and for a blessing in the midst of the children of men, and for the glory of the whole seed of Shem. For I know that the Lord will choose him to be a people for a possession unto himself above all peoples that are upon the face of the earth. And behold, Isaac my son loves Esau more than Jacob, but I see that thou truly loves Jacob. And further to thy kindness to him, and let thine eyes be upon him in love, and for he shall be a blessing unto us on the earth from henceforth into all generations of the earth. Let thy hands be strong, and let thy heart rejoice in thy son Jacob. For I have loved him far beyond all my sons, and he shall be blessed forever, and his seed shall fill the whole earth. If a man can number the sand of the earth, his seed shall be numbered. His seed shall also be numbered. And all the blessings wherewith the Lord hath blessed me, and my seed shall belong to Jacob and his seed always. And in his seed shall my name be blessed, in the name of my fathers Shem and Noah and Enoch and Mahalalel and Enos and Seth and Adam, and these shall serve. And then it kind of keeps going. So like Abraham, if this book I'm still testing this book, but if it's true and the accounts are true, then Abraham actually pulled Rebecca to the side and told him that he knew that Jacob was going to be the blessed. And I mean, he also learned writings, which is what, priests did and scribes. So if he
This
learned
is
how to write, he knew how to read, which means he could read, the book of Enoch.
I think we see this lesson to this very day. There's not a good understanding on the birth. The twins were born at the exact same time. They looked completely different. So it certainly could have been superfecundation, where she got another egg through another person, but that would not be biblical. So they're definitely twins by the same mother, the same father, looking completely different. But don't forget, he came out with his hand on the heel of Esau, like Esau had butted his way forward to get out first. Just like Isaac and Ishmael, our good Arab friends would say, no, I don't care what you say about Isaac. Ishmael was the firstborn male. He gets the inheritance. And of course, we would argue, well, he was the
Wasn't
firstborn
son
of
of
the
Abraham.
flesh. He was the firstborn of the flesh. He was not the firstborn of the covenant spirit that God promised through both Sarah and Abraham, not Abraham and some concubine or whatever she was, a servant of her. So yes, if Abraham understood, this Jubilees reading is true. If Abraham understood that Jacob was to be the firstborn, but Esau butted his way in there and got out first, and that's why he had his hand on his heel. He was fighting back, and Jacob, as we learn later, though he was a writer and Esau was a great hunter, this poor little wimp kid, as you might imagine him, fought a man in the KJV at first, an angel second, and God Almighty, Jesus, we assume, and then bit him in the thigh or something to win the wrestling match. So he must have been pretty smart as far as warfare is concerned. But if Abraham recognizes, we don't see this today. We're like, oh, Esau, this and that. So when Jacob blessed, let's see, when Isaac blessed Jacob over Israel because he faked him out with that whole goat skin on his arm and a different voice or something, and the mother was complicit in it. I think they were all complicit in the fact that they all knew that he was supposed to be the firstborn and was robbed of it. And so that's why they weren't lying when he gave them the blessing, the second blessing.
Do you think it seems like when I read that, I think there's all sorts of complicated questions about what is the word of God, and what isn't, and what does that mean, and what is the difference, and what should we say about it? Like, say that is the book of Jubilees and it's inspired. Like when I hear it, it's like, the thing is, like, people's names mean how their lives go, and then when you read all the names in the line from Adam to Jesus, it like tells you a story. Like, it seems to me that point of that story is that, like, God can use whoever he wants, and like God's saying, I'm in charge. Like, oh yeah, he's not the firstborn. Was he supposed to be? Well, if God wanted him to be, he would have been. God could have set that up, right? Like, it seems to me. And so the question is, it's like God's trying to tell us a story. Like, it seems when you read the names in order, it's like the theme is that those who like struggle with God, will be singing the Song of Moses or something like that.
No, amen. Because yeah, even if somebody did sneak in and get to be the firstborn, there is a way around that. There's two things that firstborn needs. He needs that birthright, of course, at the beginning of being the firstborn. That was sold for a cup of joe. And then he needs the blessing from the father. And he didn't get neither one of them. So there is a way around of being the firstborn.
What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses his own soul?
Well, the whole world. That's what
I think all those stories come to my mind when Jesus says that. Like, he's just like, because why did he? Esau is all caught up in worried about that stuff, and then he ends up selling his birthright, sort of thing. And it's like there's so many different ways you can tie in.
It's the pride thing. If he was this great hunter, I have hunted with great hunters. These guys bring dogs that are like they cost like $20,000, and their rifles, their shotguns are like $30,000. If these guys come back empty-handed, it is not a good day. If we got to go to Burger King, if we have to dig in the cupboards to get out some cereal to eat, it's not a good day for that hunter's pride. He is hurt. He is not only hurt, he is hungry. He will go chasing that deer. Let's say he finally found one deer. He'll chase it to the ends of the earth, and then he doesn't get it. He has to walk home hungry, and everybody at home is hungry. Yes, I can clearly understand when somebody is hungry, you would sell your soul for a morsel. I've been hungry. You don't want to be physically hungry.
You could sell your hair, Mike, to a wig shop.
Do it to you
Well,
now, boy. It's in a fro like nobody's business. I don't put it up on the weekend. I don't brush it. I don't put it back on the week. I let it go, bro.
I'm gonna sell mine here soon. But look, I was gonna ask that question next. Like, so what is Paul saying in Romans 8:9 when he goes there? You know, like, what is the point? When he talks about Jacob and Esau, and before they had done anything good or bad, they, you know, God had chosen. Like, I think the idea is that like God can do as he pleases, but it's also like for a personal application, it's like, you know, it's kind of like Jacob struggled with God, and that's the story of those who are redeemed, if you will. Yeah, that one. That's definitely how Paul is using it. I think people mess it up a little bit or overemphasize different details of it, but I'd be curious what you guys make of it too as well. What is Paul's point when he talks about that in Romans 8? I think it's 8, right? Romans 9 and 8. I guess it's 8 and 9, if I remember. Before they'd done anything good or bad, that whole thing. Calvinists love that verse.
I've got Romans 8:9 pulled up on the screen share. Is that what you're talking about?
I think so. It's where he says God chose Jacob, and Jacob I love, Esau I hated. Yeah, I mean, I'll find it. Hold on. I forget.
Yeah, those are in the flesh. These are what is it? James. He says all your thoughts. Sin is all your thoughts come from your members. All your evil thoughts come from your members. That is, those who are the children of the flesh, these are not the children of Elohim, but the children of the promise are reckoned as the seed. Yeah, that's the Isaac Ishmael. Ishmael was the seed of flesh, and Isaac was the seed of the promise. The promise was to a married couple, not the father and the wife's servant.
Yeah, verse 11 is where I was thinking there, but he talks about Isaac too and Ishmael too with the covenants. Paul does elsewhere. The greater shall serve the lesser. Like what is he saying? Like what's the point here? Because Romans starts where he basically condemns the Gentiles who don't have the law, and then he condemns the Jews who have the law, and then he's obviously adapting it to the covenant of Christ in some sense, like. He basically
just because the Jews had the law doesn't mean they were doing it, though. I mean, neither one were doing it.
Too, yeah. Even though they don't have the law, when they do the things listed in the law, and then if they, they're a law unto themselves. So like, it seems like it's making everybody guilty. For one, Jew and Gentile, which doesn't mean the law's done away with. I'm not going there at all, but that's how people will use that. But there is a sense that it's true that like it's uplifting the atonement, the necessity of the sacrifice of Christ. But I was just more talking about like, what's the point of him adapting that story in that context is the question. But sorry, go ahead. I don't have an answer in mind, by the way. I'm just curious what you guys think. What you got there?
Oh, I was just running TSK over here and taking scriptures back.
Okay.
For like the greater shall serve the lesser. And it has been written, Jacob I have loved, but Esau I have hated. And then I referred back here to Malachi chapter 1, 2, 3. I have loved you, said Yahuwah, but you asked, in what way have you loved us? Was not Esau Jacob's brother, declares Yahuwah, and I love Jacob? But I have hated Esau, and have laid waste his mountains and his inheritance for the jackals of the wilderness. If Edom says, we have been beaten down, let us return and build the ruins. Yahuwah of hosts said thus, let them build, but I tear down. And they shall be called border of wrongness, and the people against whom Yahuwah is enraged forever. And your eyes shall see, and you shall say, great is Yahuwah beyond the border of Israel. I don't know. I didn't know what it was referring to. I just saw it there in the TSK in regards to, Jacob and his brother.
Is what's difficult about like something to remember with the references. I mess this up all the time. I'm not saying you are or anything. Like a lot of times the reference is just like to the story that's being reviewed, like being mentioned, but there might be like the way he's using it isn't necessarily like from that story in particular, but
Or the same.
to a greater theme, right? It's just a reference to the quote, which may or may not be a direct reference to the concept being used, which is, I think people mess that up. Not you. I'm not saying you're doing that, but I do that. So,
and even so, like even with the Strong's Concordance, we have to be careful. We can't put all of our faith in their definitions.
Absolutely.
And the same thing with these cross references. We can't just put all of our faith into them either, but I definitely love using them. And actually, that's a good segue for me to talk about eSword. If anyone likes what you're seeing,
Please buy this product.
I want you to send me $5.99 monthly, and I will show you how to set this up and give you technical support. But you'll have to call Yahoo.
Yes, this absolutely free, awesome software.
I have their webpage pulled up here actually, because I actually was gonna promote this for them.
Did you say it was free? Because I just gifted it to someone and it cost me $3.99.
Oh, it's if you use Mac.
If you have an Apple product, Apple charges a certain price to list it on the Apple Store. So the only people you're actually paying is Apple.
Yeah, you're paying Apple, not
lame.
eSword.
Yeah, I definitely paid for my niece to have it.
Well,
Even
you're
so.
obviously not elect if you have Apple, because that's like the forbidden fruit bitten into, you know.
Ooh.
It's a reminder every time I look at that bitten apple.
There you go.
That's
that your
the
ZZ?
knowledge. You have to be careful with the knowledge that's in your hands.
Yeah, you.
I just prefer to think of it as a spiritual upwelling of evil, and so if you own an Apple product, you're obviously of the devil.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Back to what I'm trying to sell here, guys.
I got
I've got a
dark really
product
quick.
to sell on Shabbat. No, all kidding aside, this e-sword.net on PC, you can come here and download it. And then from there, you can go in and download different modules and different Bibles, different commentaries, dictionaries, even graphics, and different reference books. But it's a great program. I couldn't imagine studying any other way. And there's all sorts of stuff in here. Some's premium that you have to purchase, but there's a lot of good free content. For example, the King James Bible with the Apocrypha. I've got the Britain, the Septuagint, and it has the Apocrypha in it. And just some handy other options built in, like the dictionaries where you can get the Strongs and others, as well as the TSK, which stands for the Treasury of Scriptural Knowledge. Their cross references to other scripture. Generally, I like about everything going on here with TSK.
Can you check it out for me real quick? Let's look up Genesis 49:11.
I have mine, and I figured out how to make it black too, by the way.
Man, all about race now. Jeez.
Though none of us have learned any Hebrew in our entire life, if you've ever seen the movie Ben-Hur, you know at least one Hebrew word. Ben means son.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to Genesis 49:11 and see what our translations say about him tying a colt to the vine and his something to the choice. Let's go to 49:11 and see. Binding his foal to the vine and the foal of his ass to the branch of it. Nice. Now let's go into that word foal. Binding his foal to the vine. Let's see what the Hebrew says that word foal is.
I think that's a prophecy of Mike Banner having the jackass tied to the vine. I think that's what that is. Reference to.
Ooh.
I'm just kidding.
All year, H5895 according to Strong's. In the sense of raising, that is bearing a burden, properly a young ass is just broken to load, hence an ass colt.
This must
Foul.
this must only work in Bible Hub. I'll have to recheck. yeah, I'll have to recheck my sources on this one.
Uh-oh. But you also see that it does the TSK talking about his foul. It makes reference to an Isaiah 63 verse where you can then, click on it in reference to foul.
Oh, you know what? Can you do interlinear, a word for word Hebrew on that 4911?
I don't know what you're asking, an interlinear?
Yeah, it should be a choice you have on any Bible app.
Like the commentary. I don't know if it comes up on there.
It's called
yeah, interlinear.
I haven't downloaded that module.
I think it's usually attached to the to a Bible. Usually, I think. I forget. It seems like the eSword doesn't make that. Let me see mine here.
Well, you have many translations to choose from, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be like one with it. I forget. I'm not sure if it even has that.
You say interlinear, what are you talking about? What does that mean? I don't know.
Well, like your choices of versions, you could have KJV, NKJV, Hebrew. You could have the actual Hebrew. What is written?
Like compare?
Compare would be different versions, but there should also be a button for interlinear. It's a word that means a literal word.
The original language. It's like let's see. It's
Yeah, it has the Hebrew above and the exact words below, and you have to read it right to left because it has the Hebrew.
Well, wouldn't I just go to the Hebrew Old Testament for that same verse?
That might be the choice on this.
That is the interlinear. That is the interlinear. Yeah, like the KJV where it says Old Testament. It's when it has. Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got Hebrew Old Testament, Greek Old Testament. Many different Bible options that you can download and click between. For example, we would just click Genesis 49:11, and then once we have it selected, I could go between King James Plus with the concordance, and the different Bibles that I have downloaded.
And interlinear shows the English with the Hebrew text above it, or the Greek text above it.
Oh, okay.
It's essentially the same thing as what you're using right now.
Gotcha. Just a different way of doing it.
Yeah, it's like a side-by-side comparison, technically.
Yeah.
So technically, that is like having that right there is the same sort of thing.
I think you can go to compare maybe and do two different versions at the same time.
Yes.
There's probably maybe that Bibles that do that too, that you could download here or go to their website, which is
probably in the premium version.
Well, interlinear means together in a line. So it's it's a line by line, up against each other. That's
gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah, then that would be, your compare here. Now it doesn't put it, it doesn't stack them, but it's still a pretty nice layout nonetheless. All right. Did I lose everybody?
No, I think if you go to parallel, you can select the two different versions that you want. There should be like two different selectors there.
I texted back and I said, hey, I said
Yeah, there you go.
There you have
This
it.
would be an interlinear.
And you could, I guess, pick as many as you want to go. Yeah. So
those Hebrews read backwards is the problem.
Yeah. It doesn't make it as easy for sure.
Yeah. You've seen that old Chuck Missler one, right? Where he talks about the languages that are most written languages that are east of Jerusalem, read from right to left, and the ones west.
Oh, okay, I see my error.
Yeah.
It's the colt 4911. It's tying his donkey. Let's see, binding to the vine his donkey, and to the choice vine son of female colt of female donkeys. It's not the other way around like I thought. Binding his son to the vine. It doesn't. It is literally donkey, that 5895 that you looked up. The colt. It is Ben. The word for the colt.
Oh.
But the Ben is son of female donkey. The next word is female donkeys.
Mm.
So it does make sense that the colt would be a good translation, although they still should have put the son in there. But no, I had those mixed up. My sorry on that part.
No, you're thinking of is Genesis 22. What is it? I like to joke. I was going to make I tried it and I don't think people thought it was funny, but where Abraham, there's a line in there where he tells his servants to stay there with the donkey. It says in the King James, it says, "Abide ye here with the ass." I think it's further down. He tells the servants in the King James anyway. It says, "Abide ye here with the ass." And I was gonna say that could be a name of a open stream, live stream, open chat. Just call it
that
that.
would be great.
Oh, it'd get the hits.
I tried it. Nobody thought it was very funny. I guess they were in serious mode. I just think it's cute, whatever. I got that from a Baptist pastor. He jokingly said that one time. I thought that was funny. And that he didn't apply it to a live stream. That was my contribution, but make a live stream open chat and call it that. I did this one thing and I'm not sure if anybody picked up on it, but there's this funny video on YouTube where it gets a lot of hits or whatever. Like a guy's a farmer and he plays his trombone or like a different instruments. There's people do this, but if you go out to a field and start playing an instrument, the cows come running and they just stand there watching you. Like, it's really cool. And I played that like while I was the people coming into the live stream. I was playing that video on the screen, like calling the cattle in, sort of thing. It's funny.
I remember that stream. I had a great time.
That was fun. I'm quite pleased with myself, to be honest. Anyway.
Pride comes before the fall.
Indeed.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But I'm the ass, remember?
Oh, hey, at least you're not in denial. I
Exactly.
think we all are.
I mean,
Hey,
yeah.
What does Mike call himself? The sphincter?
Uh-oh.
Oh, the exit. In the body of Messiah, I'm the exit. I see all y'all's poo. I may not know truth, but I know what poo is when I see it.
I excrete. No, there are no.
The Nile, was that blood? It didn't just turn, just to make a point real quick, it didn't turn like red as blood. It turned into blood, is my understanding. Was that just 3 days and 3 nights? Did it come, or was it an entire week? Does anybody know off?
I don't know if I think it's blood. I think that's a great example.
Whether it was blood, like I think it was, or just red blood, was that for 3 days or was it for a week, or how long was that? Do we know, or is that
I forget.
obscure?
That would cause all kinds of problems.
Well, it would say that their God resurrected in 3 days and cleansed the water. The darkness was there, I think, for 3 days, wasn't it? 3 days and 3, and then
I think they call that Monday morning quarterbacking. And by the way, do you think the blood moon turns into blood?
I think that was a metaphor, but I don't think the actual Nile turning into blood was a metaphor. The babies of the Israelites were in there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not totally shut off from that being possible. That's a great example for me where I'm like, I want to say it's blood in a sense, but I'm not sure. I don't think it has to be, but I'm open to that.
And wasn't it called crocodile, their god too? I guess that would be the Nile would kind of ruin a crocodile's, I don't know, day. But I never really thought a lamb was their god, but I've seen I've seen hieroglyphs that where they actually are taking a lamb to slaughter, not just for like food, for like a sacrifice in the Egyptian. So yeah, that was one of their gods, as well as flies. I think they used the fly poo to make a special ointment or something funky. I've never even seen fly poo. I don't know how you'd collect it, but man, a fly was their god or gods. That's
It
crazy.
could have been their. It could have been their like pieces of their bodies, like their. They could have just called it like unclean stuff, like just like dust is mainly like fly parts and stuff like that. Not it's mostly people's skin. But what about Kek? The whole internet meme of the Kek thing is because that was the name of the frog god, I think, of the Egyptians.
Wow.
Kek. Yeah, dude. There's like a whole lore on that you can read. They say it's prophecy and all this weird stuff, and they connect it to the actual things that Egyptians said, and like it like parallels the whole meme thing on the internet. It's like really weird.
That's how I learned to drive through traffic, was through Kecker, Frogger.
Really?
Frogger was an old 1980 video game where you tried to cross the street as a frog when the traffic was
Yeah,
coming.
I remember. I'm old enough.
Yeah.
Barely.
That was on the Atari, right?
Yeah, I had an Atari. I had the Miss Pac-Man and a racing game, and then Galaga.
Oh yeah, well, I remember that one.
Yeah, I wonder what Jesus came on and how this is related to the Bible.
I know. I was just thinking that too.
I'm just messing with you guys.
Well, no, that's a good question, because in the 40s when television came out, all the conservative elders said this is a fake light. You are actually looking at a box. Don't forget, you are always looking at a box. You are not there with the rifleman. You are not there with Wyatt Earp in the old. You are not looking out a window into the outdoors when there's a movie of some mountains. And they said it's a false light. Follow the true light. And the same with the Prince of the Airwaves. Rock and roll is evil. The Prince of the Airwaves has come alive. We kind of laugh at that now, but good gracious alive, grown men dressing in dresses that I work alongside with, and I gotta call them Anne. Come on.
What? I didn't get that reference.
Oh, I work with people that are biologically male that wear a skirt above the knee like a woman and want to be called a woman's name, but they have male parts.
How do you know? That's what I thought.
No. I have an answer for you. Don't cut me off. Like, give me like a whammy noise. Like, oh, I got you on that one. No, I have an answer for you, and it's an obvious one.
Okay, good.
If you see an apple, there's probably a banana.
Probably.
If you see an Adam's apple, there's probably a banana.
Fair enough. Touche. Yeah, well, we don't have to pretend here. We know we're all grown men here.
And like,
By their fruits you shall know them.
It's true.
Hi, would you call me Anne, please? Yeah, right, Anne.
Annabelle Mahay.
Just don't call me late for dinner.
A man and a woman.
I barely hear Callie, but I don't see her picture, or unless Dustin's talking in a. I hear a woman.
I thought I heard Kaylee talking too, and we can't hear you if you are talking. Sorry,
She's
Kaylee.
gone.
Nor her picture.
She's gone.
Oh, I don't
She
know what's
dropped
going
out
on.
when Mike showed up. No.
No, I've just got background.
What do you think? What do you guys make of So you guys don't think Daniel 9:27 is talking about Jesus confirming the covenant? Is that true? You're not sure.
No, they do. They probably might not know what you're talking about, but no, I've heard them talk. They don't believe it's the Antichrist.
Because it's really interesting because it's dispensationalists who make a separation between Israel and the new the church, let's call it, just the new covenant believers, or I don't care what you call it, just
Something about the age of the Gentiles or something like that. I forget the term they use.
Yeah, which they steal. I mean, I'm not gonna say steal, but that's an old term. Like the question is, the time of the Gentiles probably started back in Nebuchadnezzar's days. In a sense, there's a sense that's the case, but there's a case to be made there what that exactly means.
Or even Caleb.
Yeah, right. There's all sorts of. But regarding this thing, like this is where like the interesting thing where like there's weird agreement between dispensationalists and some Hebrew roots, I think, and it like. I'm not exactly sure how this works, but Hebrew roots is like I would say more like a restoration movement. You can argue that there's like people like that throughout history from the first century, but the question is, there's weird overlap where like I'm in this weird middle ground where like covenant theology of the the Protestant Reformation would all say this is talking about Jesus, and then when you look at the history of like the development of eschatology, like my denomination recognizes that like almost none of the reformers recognize like any part of like they interpreted Daniel and Revelation as mostly preterist, but like there was no consensus. Nobody really knew. And that's what started the Adventist movement out of the Millerite movement, where they thought the Daniel's prophecy was predicting the end of the world, the end of the 2300 years. And then that failed, of course. And then the Adventist church comes out of that. And then kind of like then it explodes with dispensational theology, and like Schofield reference Bible stuff, which is what Chuck Missler is a product of essentially. And I'm not trying to like box people in. I'm just saying like he has that theology. And so then it's like the Hebrew roots kind of blows up here recently, you could say, historically speaking. And then you look at like Hebrew roots is kind of like I'm just kind of giving you a synopsis of what I've studied or learned or whatever. So it's like the question is, like what eschatological view is coming out of Daniel, which one's right? And like people are always just like, oh, they're wrong because they believe this, so everything they say is wrong. And I try to get over that sort of way of thinking because it just doesn't work that way. But like I obviously think this is a huge issue, an important issue that stems from this. It's like
remind me what preterist means.
Preterist would mean like Daniel and Revelation, like a full preterist would be like there's no second coming, you die and go to heaven, and they interpret all the stuff that would be like the time of Jacob's trouble and all that has just happened in the first century. All the language about Jesus' second coming.
Gotcha, that's right.
Yeah, and so partial preterism is true because there was application to like the prediction of Matthew 24 with the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. We know that Christians fled when the Roman army surrounded Jerusalem. They fled to Pella and they survived because they listened to Jesus, etc., stuff like that. So that's like partial preterism. So I had like Matthew 24 has some application to the destruction of the temple for the Christians. That's just like undeniable. But like I would agree with the futurists, like there's going to be a time of Jacob's trouble before the second coming, etc., and then the pre-trib rapture gets, that all that stuff is like an argument, and all that's tied in with this is like how. Because almost all dispensationalists, which basically blew up after like the Great Awakening and when Adventism kind of stayed with covenant theology, mainly that Jesus is in view here in 927, they kind of came up with this idea that this is talking about the Antichrist in verse 27, which I think is one of the greatest deceptions that actually like that stems all sorts of false theology where. Amen. Because it confuses it, but then it's like, but the Hebrew roots, like if you take the issue is like what you do with the Israel being restored in the land right now, like Michael Root is like a weird hybrid of Adventist theology / dispensational ideas, and so I'm not saying it's just merely that people have their reasons. I'm not trying to like throw anybody under the bus. I'm just saying like it's like this weird mix of stuff that doesn't work together. It seems to me is kind of what I'm seeing, and it kind of stems from this, which is why Michael Root has a weird way of hybridizing some of the, classically what the views have separated groups. He kind of hybridizes them, and the whole Israel thing ties into it. But most of that theology that puts an emphasis on the nation of Israel becoming a nation again is like that all comes from, historically speaking, like this idea of separating the church and Israel. And then, of course, then they call someone like me replacement theology, and I'm just going, I don't think the church replaced Israel. I think the church is Israel, and you guys have made it something it isn't, like, not keeping the Sabbath, not keeping the law. And that just has waxed worse and worse and more extreme since dispensationalism came on the scene. And it's like, and then I see just different groups kind of just like picking and choosing different things they hear from the different groups, and none of it fits together. And it's like, I don't know. I'm just kind of ranting, but
Right. No, it makes sense. If they don't know anything about the law, they're gonna come to the crazy conclusions. Just a simple reading of your, what is it, 926, 62 weeks, he'll be cut off. We know right away that there's a missing week. And if we're doing the addition as the angel is talking in Daniel 9:27, they stop reading at he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. This is his week of his Passion Week. And then in the midst of the week, literally on a Wednesday, the midst of the week, his sacrifice ended the sacrifice. It doesn't say the sacrifice system. It doesn't say the sacrifices. It says he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation. There is many oblations that are done daily, but it's specifically called the daily oblation, singular. He'll cause those to cease, and Jesus did at his death, burial, and resurrection. And for the overspreading, so if that ceases,
are you
but
saying
the
you think
temple,
you think the oblation is the daily then?
of course, if he doesn't like the temple and he dies, and this temple is eventually destroyed, it sounds like that's exactly what he's talking about. He caused it to cease, but the temple is going on and on. So there's an overspreading of abominations. He's going to make it desolate. And the Temple Mount is desolate. He's going to make it desolate even until the consummation. What's this consummation? They have no idea. To me, it's the Holocaust. These people that continued not believing in Jesus, continuing with their Judaism, incurred those curses after curses after curses of years of Leviticus 26, so that we get from 457 BC, 7 times 7 times 7 times 7, we get 1945, the consummation, the Holocaust. We burned 6 million Jews or 800,000 Jews, not leaving Jew from Jewish descent Jews. And that being determined shall be poured upon the desolate. Yeah, they're desolate. They did not recognize the time of their visitation and chose to stay in line with Judaism that does not believe in the Savior. I don't know. Coincidentally, 3.5 years later, the state of Israel was born. But can a nation be born in a day? Well, yeah, July 4, 1776, but we had 13 years of fighting. Hey,
We're
May.
talking about nation the land or nation the people here? I guess that's
Exactly.
the
I
question.
think it's a rhetorical question. A nation cannot be born in a day. It has to be born like at a date, July 4th, 1776 or 1948, when but it's going to take a maturity. It's funny, in the 20th year, they went to where a man can go to war. Israel went to war. 7 Arab nations rose up against them in a surprise attack and failed. They interviewed the soldiers later that said, why did you guys stop? You were advancing on Jerusalem. Why did you had 200 tanks. They had like some rusty old tank over on the side of the curb shooting back. Why did you guys stop? And the Jordanian officer said, we saw an angel say, stop, go back. God intervened in and then 7 years later, 1973, another war. This is craziness if we don't recognize this. Does the Holocaust have to be in the Bible for us to recognize it as our history, but Jesus's future, the apostles' future? You know what I mean? If you think that, what is the last book of the Old Testament supposed to be? Malachi or something? And then it jumps right into Matthew. Everybody says, oh, take out that middle page. It's just a complete continuation. It's one story from Genesis to Revelation. Well, yeah, if what happened to the book of Maccabees? That happened in 200 BC. Malachi was 400 BC. How about showing a little bit of the Maccabean revolution in there so we know what the original abomination of desolation was? Oh, when you see the abomination of desolation stand where it ought not, where does the abomination of desolation stand? In Rome, the Arch of Titus, a 1 billion-ton marble carved out. It is showing the abomination of desolation, and it's standing in the wrong place, the holy to the Antichrist, the holy city of the Antichrist, Rome. It's not standing in Jerusalem where it ought to be. If you think it's going to be some other guy roasting a pig in 2028 at a rebuilt temple on the Temple Mount, none of that is going to be acceptable. And it would be stupid, like Chris Lucas points out, for the Antichrist to stop something so against God. It's if you started the sacrifices again, you're going to be confirming that Jesus' sacrifice sucked and that you need to go back to these sacrifices, or Jesus was never the Messiah. We need to do these until the Messiah comes. Whatever it is, it's going to be wrong. So why would the Antichrist like stop it? The whole point of the daily oblation and the sacrifice were because of our death penalty we incurred at the golden calf.
Okay, now let me interject, Mike, because I agree with you. Now here's the question. Then what is Paul talking about in 2 Thessalonians? Because he says, he references what this figure that Christ destroys with his coming.
There is
a future abomination of desolation. So what does he have in mind then?
Yeah, post the scripture.
Yeah, which verse?
2 Thessalonians 2, I think. Well, you tie that with Matthew. I mean, okay, the son of perdition. Would you agree that? So do you think there's an abomination of desolation in the future?
What is Jesus supposed to give 1,000-year reign? Is Jesus supposed to give 1,000-year reign?
Well, yeah, that starts at his coming. This is before that, though, in the Great Tribulation.
Well,
so
I'm preterist, so it's already happened.
Scroll down. Like he says, the secret of lawlessness is, so he says the spirit of the lawless one is already at work, right? And the one who's holding it back will do so until the man of sin be revealed. By the way, the Antichrist, he's lawless, folks, lawless. The man of sin, the one Jesus destroys because he's evil and he implements the mark of the beast. He's called the son of lawlessness. He's the man of sin, and he's destined to perdition because he's lawless. The ones Jesus doesn't know, they're lawless. They're workers of iniquity. If you love me, keep my commandments. Just saying. And this reason Elohim sends them a working delusion. So look, it says, and look, he sends them strong delusion, which is regarded with this lawless one, and with all deceit of unrighteousness in those who are perishing because they did not receive the love of the truth. They say things like, you don't have to keep the law. The law is sin and death. The law, I'm dead to the law. Yeah, Jesus took away God's character so you could be a bumptious idiot. Sorry, I'm passionate.
Well, if Jesus is promising 1,000-year reign of Jesus and a 7-year tribulation, I won't even get into that. Didn't Hitler promise a 1,000-year reign of the Third Reich? Didn't he wipe out these non-believing Jews, like in the name of God? He gave them the choice to go back to Israel. He set up a banking system. He says, go back. And they're like, no, we're rich here in Russia. We're rich here in Germany. We're not going to go back to some desert that Mark Twain just wrote about, saying it's a desert. Why would we go back?
Mike, the point I was getting at that I'm trying to say is, if right from right now there is an abomination of desolation in the holy place, and what you just said is true, I agree with you. Okay, but the type of the abomination of desolation is when something profane is where it ought not be, where something is called holy. So that's the picture of what an abomination of desolation is. It's when the temple was defiled. But Jesus took away the temple, right? Because the sacrifices in the temple, like you just said, yet there is a future abomination of desolation. And our only example of an abomination of desolation is when something unholy is placed in the holy place of the temple. But you just said that's done away with. If the Antichrist did that, it would be like saying it would be good, because if they're trying to do sacrifices in a temple, they're rejecting Messiah.
Right.
But yet so there is an abomination of desolation in the future. So what could it be?
So where's the holiest of holies today? We just spoke about it.
You are the temple of God, it says.
No. The actual Ark of the Covenant, the Holy of Holies, like that Moses.
There's one in heaven, and seems, if Ron Wyatt's right, there's one on the earth. Right. I don't know what to make of that.
Right. That was revealed. Whether you believe it or not, it was revealed that 2 Thessalonians 2, whatever, the Antichrist was revealed. The Antichrist is probably the Pope of whatever current Pope. I'm just saying he was mocking that 1,000-year reign of Jesus, and that sounds like the spirit of the lawless one.
Well, okay. What I was going to get to is Adventists say that because of Paul's development of this language of the temple, being like he says the believers are the temple, like you are living stones, right? And the Holy Spirit dwells in you now. Like he puts the law in their hearts. Where was the law? It was in the Holy of Holies. And then he calls us the temple of the living God. You know, he who defiles the temple of God shall be destroyed. He's talking about your body. He's talking about taking care of your body.
Don't forget the other temple. Don't forget the Nehemiah and Ezra's temple that they rebuilt, that the Maccabees rededicated and got super duper approval of. That was dismantled after Herod's temple was built around it. That is the abomination of desolation. If you're waiting for Titus to sack Jerusalem and go in to the Holy of Holies and do a pig sacrifice or something, Jesus said, when you see that, get out of Judea. That's crazy. You would already have been dead if you saw the abomination of desolation. So when you see the abomination of desolation that was spoken of by Daniel, is the one that happened in Nehemiah and Ezra's temple. It was rededicated because of that abomination. So when you see that, let those who read it, nobody's going to read it unless they know about the book of Maccabees. Let those who read it, the Pharisees read it. The people don't read it. The Pharisees read it in Moses' seat every synagogue, Sabbath.
Wait, you don't think it was when the Roman armies surrounded Jerusalem in 70 AD and the Christians fled to Pella? That was that warning that Jesus gave them, that they fled from Pella because of what Jesus said, and then didn't get killed when the Roman armies destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD.
I think that's what Jesus said through Luke. Luke talks about
70 AD. Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, Luke talks about mostly 70 AD and a little bit of end times. Matthew and Mark talk mostly about end times. So yes, there must be some sort of abomination of desolation, but notice the wording in it. It sounds like the Holocaust. It sounds like World War II to me. World War II started.
Yeah, but he's talking to, but Jesus is talking to believers in Messiah, that when you see the abomination. So here's my point. Like what happened in Maccabees is obviously the same sort of thing, something unholy in the temple. And then Jesus tells them that would happen in 70 AD, and they listened and they escaped. That's a historical fact. So, but then what will the future one be from like to us before the end? Like Jesus, we know that Jesus meant to the disciples in their time period, to the Christians, that would be Rome destroying the temple, and they escaped. But that also has future application. That's the point I was making. And
I just think the last best temple was, I don't even know what they call it, Nehemiah's and Ezra's temple that the Maccabees rededicate, whatever that temple is. Everybody forgets about that. Once that is taken away, that's the abomination of desolation, in my opinion.
That's it. There is no future application.
Yes, there's the 70 AD future application, but there's the consistent many desolations until the consummation. So it sounds like, there's an abomination and it's going to be desolate until the consummation, which happened both with that temple that was dismantled and the one that was sacked by the Romans, right? Because the Jews did what? Revolted. The people of the prince revolted and got their own temple. You yourself say, your house, not my house, or our house, your house will be left desolate. So yes, they're Herod's temple. Where's the great dedication in history for Herod's temple? Where's the 8 days of oil miracle for Herod's temple? Where is it in history?
Yeah, but Jesus called that temple his father's house. Earlier in the story, he says when they're poaching the people's money at the temple with the sacrifices overpriced and all that, he chases them out of there. He calls it his father's house there.
Correct. And additionally, later on, the apostles mentioned the beautiful stones, and it's like, well, yeah, where's the other temple? What's wrong with that one? Why do you guys got to build this 5-story tall, God knows how many menorahs? Solomon's temple had 10 menorahs. God knows how many menorahs this one had. Huge. But they got I was going to say pigs, but they got sheep in the northeast corner of the Temple Mount. Come on.
So you're not saying that God didn't accept the sacrifices in that temple in the first century though, until they reject Jesus, right?
Oh, absolutely. He did not accept them after Jesus' death, and he probably
but before that he did, right? Before that he was. It's not like it wasn't. He wasn't accepting the Day of Atonement sacrifice and all that at that time, right?
He would have to. Yes, of course, he would have to.
Okay,
I mean,
okay. I just want to be clear on that. I'm just not sure. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, the only thing that we try to understand is how can he do away with the Day of Atonement and Passover at the same time? And I heard you guys talking about that earlier about Hebrews 9 or 10 or something, and that was a beautiful point. Cali, like California? Is that? I didn't make that connection. Anyway, she was saying
No, it's Kaylee with a K.
Hey, Kaylee, thank you. Was making about how there's probably no more, that it sounded like they did away with the Day of Atonement only. So yeah, if we understand he did away with Passover, how could he also do away? That seems to be explained in Hebrews. The priest had to go in there every year, and him being an actual, it's the one sacrifice where you take a goat, and Jesus was the actual goat of God, if you want to put it that way. But people have a picture in their mind that he separates the lamb and the goats, and that the goats are evil. But I don't know. Maybe he took the curses and
that's taking it too far. They're both goats on the Day of Atonement.
Yeah, there's no. So yeah, you can't die twice as a man, but he had to partake in our death so that he could be our judge. But yeah, if he
Adventists think the second goat is Satan, by the way. The goat that goes into the wilderness. The goat for Azazel.
Yeah, I don't know why we would sacrifice to Satan. I don't know. That's kind of crazy.
You don't sacrifice that one. They send it off into the wilderness.
I have a question.
Oh, they did later. They threw it off a cliff to make sure it died. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That was the goat for Azazel. The other goat was the goat for Yahweh.
Right. So why would you kill the Azazel goat on behalf of Satan?
They sent it off to the wilderness. It was the goat for Azazel. It's complicated. We think it types the end when Satan's destroyed, sort of thing. That's why we say the Day of Atonement is like a type, like Christ is the sacrifice, the blood sacrifice for Yahweh that covers the sins, and then the goat for Azazel going into the wilderness is tied to the theme of Revelation when Satan's destroyed at the end of the 1,000 years, sort of thing.
But Satan doesn't. He eats dust all the days of his life, and that's us. So that sounds like, a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is a good thing. It's that. Anyways, I mean, if Jesus took away our sins, why are you still sinning?
Well, there is no sin if they think that there was only one law and Jesus did away with it.
I know.
They only have to love their neighbor as themselves now. That's Leviticus 19. No, that's crazy. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, sorry,
Dustin.
guys. Sorry.
Please, Dustin, go.
So do you believe the abomination of desolation has already happened?
I don't. I mean, I don't think the final one is. I think the final one is when the mark. I think the mark of the beast is when the Roman Church gets power with the civil government, with the silver government of the world, and then implements a law that says that makes the Sabbath a law. And so if you keep Sabbath, then you won't take the mark of the beast, and that'll be enforced. And so the defilement is defiling the law of God and enforcing false Sabbath on people.
The reason I'm asking is it says, "See when you see the abomination that lays waste." Keep reading. "For then there shall be great distress, such that has not been seen since the beginning of the world unto this time, no, nor ever shall be." I think that's kind of immediately following this. And if this has already happened, then we would have already seen the great distress. And then immediately following the great distress, the sun shall be darkened, the moon shall not give its light, and the stars shall fall from the heaven. The powers of the heavens shall be shaken, and then the sign of the Son of Adam shall appear. And then we have Jesus coming.
Yeah, so, 2 atomic bombs ended World War II.
And I'm just saying, if the abomination of desolation happens, we would have seen a great distress, and Jesus would already have been here.
Yeah,
just
this
the way
is.
I'm reading this.
Yeah, I think he's coming soon because that has already happened. But in World War II,
it says immediately, not like, I don't know. I guess we need to define immediately, because it doesn't say that often in the Bible. And I think, that it says it here. There's some importance to it. I mean, I don't know.
But people will use the same when they see Jesus coming in the clouds, they say, we are supposed to go up there to meet him. When the verse says we will go up there to meet him and we will be with him forever, they will say, no, we're just going to go up there to meet him, to come back, because there's a giant space in that sentence where that comma is. He will come back in the clouds and we will go up to meet him and we will be with him forever. So they say there's a giant gap there. We're going to meet him in the sky.
There?
He's going to come back and he's going to destroy all his enemies, and we are going
That's
to reign
wrong.
with him on earth, and
What?
then we're going to be with him forever in heaven.
What?
So this
There you go.
Hold that thought. What gap, and why do those or you think there's a gap there from a scriptural standpoint?
Because they want to make 2 second comings because they need a 7-year tribulation, which doesn't exist. That's what I'd
Right.
say.
So when he says immediately, if I look at 1948, 1945 as the end of the consummation, when quite honestly, the last 2 concentration camps were freed on Good Friday and Easter Sunday. I mean, what? That's like biblical. The immediately after that, I would have no problem with 2028, 2078, 2100. I would have no problem with that being the immediate coming of Jesus after that. But we also need the son of perdition to be revealed, which I see in Hitler. We also need 2 witnesses.
How was Hitler opposing God, though? Hitler wasn't opposing believers, and Paul's warning believers in Messiah.
So
in Second
hold
Thessalonians.
up. I want to make sure I understand. Are you claiming, or saying someone claims that Hitler was the false Messiah?
I would say he was an antichrist. He was the spirit that we just read about in 2 Thessalonians. The
Okay.
abomination of desolation would be the temple that was just before Herod's temple, and in the 68 AD or 70 AD, that abomination of desolation. But if you think that there's going to be a future temple built where somebody's going to defile it, I don't think that temple is going to have any approval to even be holy to be defiled.
Let me help you out here, because I think I can make some points that are kind of undeniable on this. So, and I don't mean to be cocky about it. I'm just saying, like, consider this. So I think a principle you have to follow with the Bible is like, so Paul's talking in 2 Thessalonians to people who believe in Messiah. And that's how we understand scripture. Like we consider who's being talked to and what they're being told, and then we apply that to ourselves. He's talking to people who are believers in Messiah, and they thought the day of the Lord had already come. No, it hasn't come yet, because that's what this whole chapter in 2 Thessalonians 2 is about. The day of the Lord will not come, because they think the day of the Lord already happened, yet their friends are still dead. That was the issue. Like, those who have fallen asleep will not precede those. We will not precede those who have fallen asleep. So don't worry, the day of the Lord hasn't come yet. And then he's explaining why that happens. And this ties into Matthew 24. I'm trying to bring it back to it. So the point is, he's talking to believers in Messiah who are confused about the day of the Lord. Well, so when he says that day will not come until there's a falling away first, a falling away from what? Well, it seems to me that has to be the truth about the Messiah. He's talking about the apostasy of the church. Those who believe in Messiah.
That's a rebellious stand. That's not apostasia is against, and apostasia is a position, a stand. There's a rebellious stand.
That's fine, but notice what the leader of this group is called. The spirit of this group is the lawless one. They're lawless, and they 1 John 2, they went out from us because they were not of us. That spirit of that group is what's already present when he's writing that letter. And so I'm going to say, because it's about believers in Messiah, they're called lawless, and they went out from us because they were not of us. And the woman's called a harlot. She's an apostate, church, or apostate group of believing ones that are lawless. And so my point is, with Matthew 24, I agreed with what Dustin was saying. Look, Matthew 24, that is connected right before Jesus' second coming. And that's what Paul's describing in 2 Thessalonians, the Antichrist leader of that group. That's called the lawless one, whose spirit's already at work in the church. They went out from us because they were not of us. They're lawless. But Jesus Christ is going to destroy that figure with the brightness of his coming and the breath of his mouth. And so the question is, how does this abomination of desolation apply to that group of believing ones in Messiah? Because it ain't going to be a temple, because Jesus did away with the temple. So what else could it be? Then Paul goes on to develop in his other letters that we are the temple of God. And so the abomination is some sort of lawless claim that's enforced on the people against God's law. That's why Adventists believe what we believe. So just wanted to get that
Well,
out there.
lawless being anti-Torah, of course, too, and that's the great Roman Catholic Church.
Yeah,
Our
what did they do?
side-
Seek to change times and laws. It's not talking about civil laws. It's talking about the law of God. What did he do? He instantiated the change of the Sabbath, and then he persecuted the saints of the Most High. Like he obscured the message of justification by faith, which is what the Protestant Reformation, as much as they have errors in their thought, they're thinking dude, we have the Bible right now, all of us, because of that Reformation, because they said the Catholics wanted to, he is the lawless one. He's the one who seeks to change times and laws. He is out of Rome. He is apostate group. And so that's why we believe what we believe. I just wanted to point that out. And you just did a good job of covering the reasons why that is with Matthew 24.
I think additionally, it says the end shall come with a flood. Everybody translates that as a flood of people. But the World War II did not start at Pearl Harbor. It started exactly 3.5 years earlier when Japan invaded China, and China blew up their own dikes, their own levee system to try to drown the enemy, and they ended up drowning their own people. 1 million people were drowned. It's the largest flood in the history of the world since Noah.
Well, what about Revelation 12 too, where it says, after Jesus, in the imagery, Jesus ascends into heaven, the man-child with a rod of iron is taken up into heaven, and then it says the woman flees, and for 1,260 days, it says. I think that's, when you parallel that with Daniel, if you understand that woman to be, someone will say, well, is that Mary? Is it Eve? Is it Israel? Is it the church? I would say, yes, it's all of those. It's God's people. Mary, the symbology is really overarching with the people of God, the story of God's people. And so the woman, after Jesus ascends in the imagery there, would be God's people fleeing. You can apply that into all sorts of different things, but I would argue that it's just the story of the dragon, and he opens his mouth and a flood comes out of his mouth, and then it says the earth swallowed up the flood and the woman flew to the wilderness. Like,
right. Right. In 1933, the I don't even know what you would call him, the Emperor of China. You think of China as like this communist country for like centuries. The Emperor of China was publicly baptized Methodist in 1933, 1936.
But are you saying the woman is the non-believing, is Jews who don't believe in Messiah, is the woman?
I'm saying that this woman that is fleeing could be an evil woman, such as the Virgin Mary,
okay.
that the Roman Catholic Church has put into a position of the Mother of God. Me and Dustin would say the Mother of God is the Holy Spirit. That's quite an abomination. But it also could be a parenthetical.
Well, I believe that's the harlot woman, but the woman in Revelation 12 is the people of God, I would argue.
Imagine it as the Roman Catholic Church. She was pained to be birthed. They tried to get this false god out there. This woman fled from war. She went to the wilderness or something. I'm just saying it could be a bad position, and it could be a very good position describing.
I agree with you about what you're saying, but the context in Revelation 12 is the woman is God's people in Revelation 12. I don't disagree with what you're describing.
So have you guys seen the video of this, like in the sky, where you can use the virtual
yes,
planetarium and make it happen, like 2017, I believe, September?
I would say it definitely happened in the first century, but this is talking about Jesus. This is a really overarching, very highly symbolic thing. It seems to me the story is about God's people through history, and then it centers on the birth of Jesus. Because I don't know how I've heard people say this is just talking about Israel, and if you mean it depends on what you mean by Israel. But I would say it's the people of God, just to be direct, because it's the story of like Satan being after, because it goes on and it ends. Here's the devil was wrath with the woman because he went to make war with the remnant of her seed who keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus. So that tells you who the woman is. It's those who believe in Messiah and keep the law.
Right. So are Jews keeping the law by going against Deuteronomy 12:31, 12:32, and adding to the law? Are the Christians following the law when they go against Deuteronomy 12:32 and take away from the law? No, they are not in covenant with the Lord.
Are they God's people? I would argue that. Well, that's a good point.
Yes, that's a good point. So if they are Israel, the non-believing Judaism Israel, who kept the like original commandments and have kept the Torah for us to decipher for them because they keep messing it up apparently. Yes, they came on eagle's wings, American ships with American eagle flags and planes. Einstein came to America. Hundreds of thousands came to America for refuge. They came to the wilderness. Don't we watch our movies and the old westerns? They are on the frontier. Though in 1888, the Brooklyn Bridge was built. In 1888, here in Omaha, we had cowboys and Indians. It's the frontier.
Yeah, but the problem is though the 1260 are not literal days for one, because they come out of Daniel, and those are not days because you can't say that's a literal time period when the Jews never used a literal lunar calendar. That would falsify scripture, in my opinion. So I'm going to say, I hear where you're coming from. I would just say Jesus promised to work with the church in the sense that, like, what he established with those who believed in him, and they went astray very early. I'm not denying that. I think, though, we know and have what we do because of the Reformation. People should respect that because it's part of the story of God calling them out of darkness in the Middle Ages. I mean, if you want to say all that's nothing, I disagree. I would say Christ has been working people who believe in him towards the truth, and that's where we're at today. We're working towards that full truth, and it's like the
wrong way branched off into the wrong way.
But God's still there. He's there. He's with it, though. He's working with it, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And wait till it all comes crashing down with my beautiful Holy Spirit puzzle chart.
Yeah.
Proving them all wrong. What are they going to do then? Well, we don't really care about that. No, you just preached for 2,000 years how to eat Jesus. Now I'm telling you, it didn't even go down that way. What are you going to say?
Mike on the weekends, he sneaks into the nursing homes and he purees like gallons and gallons of crackers that he stole from the Catholic Church, and he finds Catholic people in the nursing home, and when everyone's at night at sleep, he straps them to the bed and he just feeds it with a funnel, and he just pours gallons and gallons of crackers.
I knew it.
He saves that man. That man goes home saved. I tell you what, he goes home early. There you go.
There's a clarity on how to do if you learn how to do Passover, you find out it's a 12-day event. You choose your lamb on the 10th, you keep it up for 4 days in your own home. You kill it and cook it on the 14th. You eat it and burn it on the 15th, which is an added Sabbath, and it starts the 7 days where you can't have any leaven in your house. If you understand that, then you'll see that Jesus came in on his triumphal entry into Jerusalem on Aviv 10. He was inadvertently chosen by the high priest and kept up for 3-4 days, being interrogated, being questioned and examined, looking for fault. They could find no fault. Pilate said 3 different times, 3 different days.
I just point out, Mike, that you're eating you're saying Jesus, you're eating your Passover Jesus. Look at you. You're eating Jesus.
Correct. So if the Feast of Unleavened Bread was commanded forever, how could Jesus do away with it? He didn't. He did away with the meal, that special meal you do for the 4 days prior to that. To this day, you should be going to Jerusalem, and there should be no unleavened bread there. There's no need for a temple. There was no temple in the first Passover. The only reason you're going there is because that's where you go to do it. There's a provision in the Bible.
Are you saying it's a sin to not eat the Passover meal?
The breaking of the bread or the sacrificed lamb?
No, I'm just wondering, do you define it as a sin to not keep Passover in that way? I'm just curious. I'm not trying to attack you. I'm just curious. Like, is that a sin in the same sense of like sins you need to repent of? You know what I mean? I'm just curious.
If you made an agreement with God to follow his commands, why would you not? Unless you're on the outside trying to peek in at what the rules are and you got that question.
Well, no, I don't have a problem with it. I'm just wondering if you make a different category, because I tend to make that I think I'm not sure about it. I just would say, and there's all sorts of just making this difficult with the terminology that different people have used over the years. And so what that invokes, if I say it, it's just like they did the sacrificial system on different things to do the sacrifices for sins because they needed their sins provided for. And so the question in my mind is like, was it a sin if Jesus didn't keep the Passover or didn't do the Day of Atonement? Did Jesus need to go to the Day of Atonement? Because isn't it made to take away your sins? So like, would Jesus fail? Would Jesus be a sinner if he didn't do the Day of Atonement when he didn't need sins atoned for? That's like the question.
The only command for the Day of Atonement is to afflict your soul. So I don't know what sacrifice or what trip you think he's going to be taking on, what he is actually going to do. But yeah, if you want to relate that to like Sukkot or Shavuot or Passover, did he do away with that, or is it a sin for him to miss it? I would say yes, because you just got into an agreement. You're in an agreement to do those. Now,
that seems right to me. That seems right to me.
But if you're peeking over the fence, wondering what all these rules are, and you're kind of, before I sign that covenant, do I?
I agree with you. I agree with you. You shouldn't be asking how many sins can I commit before I lose my salvation is the wrong question.
Right,
I don't like it when people say that.
Right, because you've lost your salvation at the smallest little infraction you've ever done as a sin, but it's not like you have a contract to make your house payment, and instead of paying $500, you paid $499. He's not going to take your house away from you. He's going to give you a spanking. You're going to have to do something to make yourself clean again, and that is where you bring the tablets of your heart to him, and you're like, oh, you're right, Lord, I'm sorry. I did this Sabbath terribly wrong. Forgive me. I'm trying to do it right. But if you go there with like, oh my God, do I have to do nothing on the Sabbath? I can't even go fishing. That sucks. That's a stupid rule. It's like, dude, you're not even in covenant. What do you care?
So how unfaithful can I be to my wife?
Faith is the hope of a future event. We are hoping to be resurrected. We have faith. We have a confidence in a future event. So when you say, if you lose your faith, it's not like saying, oh, I'm a Baptist and now I'm a Catholic. I lost my faith, or I'm a Buddhist. I've lost my faith. I think you still think that you're going to be resurrected somehow, either into everlasting torment or purgatory or heaven, however you picture it. You really don't think that your life is done when your life ends and there is no resurrection. That sounds a complete loss of faith.
Dustin's trying to show us something here, I think. And by the way, Yahoo, you can do whatever you want to your wife. If you sign that contract, she has to stay married to you. You can beat her up or never talk to her again. You're still married.
No, we see this in the law. We see this in the law, Jamie. If you steal a turtle dove, you replace a turtle dove. If you steal a sheep, you replace 3. And if you steal a bull, you replace 5. So yeah, no matter what of the smallest little laws that you break, you have broken the blood covenant. But there's tons of provisions in there, let alone the sacrifices, which we no longer do. We just go to Jesus with a contrite heart.
I need to raise the hand button.
Yeah.
I'm just playing, just jabbing a little bit.
Well, no, it's cool. That's true. I think, what is it? The Zoom, I think, has raise a hand. But
Jitsi, yeah, we used to use it and has a little raise hand option. And
Dude, it's okay. You can raise your voice, interrupt me, and slap, knock heads together.
I was going to say, you have to chime in.
I'm too agreeable and conscientious of others for that.
I know, I'm the same way.
No, but I guess since I do have everyone's attention, I didn't mean for that. And a great sign was seen in the heaven, a woman clad with the sun, with the moon under her feet. And by the way, this isn't my discovery. I was watching a Steve video, and he was talking about someone else.
Wadsworth?
I don't recall, to be honest.
You're talking about 2017?
Yes. Do you remember this? Yeah, she's clad with the sun. Can you see what I'm sharing here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Clad with the sun, with the moon at her feet, and above her, a crown of 12. And here you see Leo at this particular time of 9/23/2017, that Leo combined with, I think, Venus, Mercury, and maybe, yeah, it's 2 added to it. Maybe not. But either way, you get 12 points to the constellation. And Leo, lions always, represent, royalty. So that's very interesting to say, none the least. And then here, being pregnant, she cried out in labor to give birth. And here you see Jupiter underneath here. And some say that's symbolic of Israel. I just think this is neat, whether there's anything to it or not. And maybe this is a marker for the beginning of the end. I'm not saying that, thus said Dustin or anything. Just neat data to look at is all.
And I think
Well, this is the Jesus birth, right? Like Jupiter is the king star because it's the biggest planet, it's the brightest one, and it was retrograde in motion going into the Judah, which is the lion, during 3 BC on Tishri 1. The alignment happened exactly in every sense, and including the star being the star of Bethlehem in the right time period leading up to Jesus' birth. And there's an 80-minute window, and during the day the sun would have passed right through her belly. During the day portion of in 3 BC. And
it's actually -2 here, I think is what it's called, because there's a 0 that's added in Stellarium. So the 0 year would be, 1 BC. And then, -1 would be 2. And then -2, which is where I'm going, will be 3 BC.
The moon should be at her feet, but it's like when you're from Judea too, apparently. That's what I've heard.
You had to go to Baghdad where the 3 men would have been standing for this next one. And that's why I went for that last one too. And just because it always paints the picture there. But I'm trying to find you.
Are you saying it doesn't work in 3 BC or it does? What do you think?
Well, I'm saying that Stellarium, they add 0 year. So that 0 year is 1 BC. And -1 is 2, and then -2, which is where I'm at, is actually 3 BC. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it looks like the moon is at her arm.
Well, I'm going back to the time of Yeshua's birth, and I don't remember where that exactly was here.
My understanding was, I was understood from Dr. Heiser that it was 3 BC Tishri 1, which was September 11 in 3 BC, apparently.
This would be that day right here. But what time during the day? Because that does play a bit of a difference.
I think it's 6 p.m. would have been a 60-minute window where all the things align properly. They say it's an 80-minute window where all the things line up perfectly. That's what I was told. That's what you got there.
Yeah, but she's starting to, from where we're at in Baghdad, Virgo's starting to leave the picture by 6 o'clock. So we'd have to be.
I'm not sure. That's what I remember. I can't be sure though. Maybe 8 p.m. I don't remember.
And I'm with you. I'm not near as smart as the people I'm referring, but yeah, I'm having a hard time finding it here.
Because it seems like it's tied to Jesus' birth in that part of Revelation, right? So then the question is, how do you interpret the 1260 days? That comes from Daniel 7, which is the times, and half a time, which supposedly, right, this is what people say. I know people have different views on this, but if Daniel 7 is referring to a prophetic time period after the Roman Empire, because that's when it's introduced, it's after the Roman person is in the succession of kingdoms. Chapter 7 introduces Rome. It seems to be talking about some Roman power or the Antichrist that Paul's referring to in 2 Thessalonians 2. And it seems like it's going to be the one that comes out of Rome, because that's the last kingdom before it's struck with the rock, which fills up the whole earth, which is Christ. And that Rome was the empire that was established at Jesus' first coming. And if you understand that to have ties to the second coming, which I think you have to because of Matthew 24 and other things, the last empire that's in charge before the rock hits the feet of the statue and fills the whole earth is Rome. And so if you're a preterist, it's Rome. But if you're a futurist, it's still the case that Rome is the last empire, which this power that's described in Daniel 7, and I would argue Daniel 8, has to be the one that's being described, that's established in Romans 7, because it's the last empire. So however you work that out, we know Rome was the empire that takes over the church in the, after the new covenant's established, and we have all the attributes of that person. So anyways, I'm going on a rant here. Sorry.
Nope, you're good.
There's so many explanations, but it's just like, there's certain facts that are just the case. Like what I just was talking about. It's like, you have to make it tied to Rome somehow, whether, and I would argue that the apostate church, the fact that the woman imagery of a harlot and a virgin and how it's used in scripture says to me that the Antichrist has to be an apostate believing system, because he exalts himself as God. And I don't see how an Islamic leader is going to say they're God, or that they represent God in that way. I guess you could say, like, change God's law. That's what he's looking to do. He puts himself in the place of God. He's lawless. I don't know. It just seems like, and it comes out of Rome, and we know the Roman church is the apostate church. So I don't know how it could be anything else, but sorry, I'm really taking over your show. I'm sorry about that.
Oh no, not at all, man. Not at all. I enjoy you guys, and I hope you guys didn't take me wrong earlier when I was doing the raised hand. I was just, razzing you guys like I would my friends.
Yeah.
I'm not razzing you. I'm probably mad at you, is what I say. But interesting here, I pulled up Revelation 12:6, talking about the woman fleeing to the wilderness where she has a place prepared by Elohim to be nourished there 1,260 days. And the TSK points to, in reference to 1,000, Revelations 11:2-3 here.
Yes, it's mentioned. Same thing, 42 months.
Exactly. In regards to the two witnesses for the 42 months. So that was kind of, it helped me place that in my timeline a little bit better. Not saying I had my timeline all figured out. But
can I show you something that's really critical that a lot of people miss? I have a chart for it that I've made, and
that's cool. Yeah.
A lot of people miss this, and I'll try to speak in just general terms for what the text says without like inserting any of my own, even though I feel strongly about it, but I want to try to be objective here. But so I argue, I'm looking for the right one here. Let's see. So most people take that as like literal, like 1,260 literal days, right? So, but even the futurists will point out, I'm pulling it up here, it's just loading. The issue, and I think this is like pretty undeniable if I put it that way here. It's so the reason I say you shouldn't take it literal, like, because most people will agree this 1260 is, and I'll show you on the chart here, is the 300 and let's see, right? So this is a futurist chart who would take it literally. This is what they say. And they're right in the sense that they are the same thing. So here's a chart with the, you see that? That's
pretty.
So 42 months is in Revelation 2. 1,260 days is 11:3. So it's mentioned like 3 different times, and it tells you it gives you different imagery. The 2 witnesses that have fallen in the street, women fled into the wilderness in Revelation 12. Revelation 12:14, you have the times, and half a time. And the 42 months again in Revelation 13. And look, don't be confused. It's all the same amount of time expressed in different ways. And that's right. 3.5 years on a 12 months a year, with 3 times 12 is 36 plus 6 months is 42 months. If every month is 30 days, 30 times 42 is 1,260 days. And a time would be 1, times would be 2, and half a time would be 0.5. 1 plus 2 plus 0.5 is 3.5. Which is what, and there's even 3.5 days mentioned in there too. And that's another question you could ask, if that's the same thing. I would argue it is. Now here's the problem. If you say the text is saying, and this comes from Daniel 7 too, by the way, and this 1260 is mentioned in Daniel. I want to say it's a couple places, but the 1260 is the times, and half a time, which is mentioned in Daniel 7. That's the first time this sort of increment is mentioned in Daniel 7. Daniel 12 mentions the 1260, which it's mentioned in before that already, but it mentions the 1290, which would be another 30 days, and then a 1335, which would be another 45 days on top of the 1290. But here's the thing. So people say, well, those are literal. So it's literally talking about a period in history of 1,260 days or 3.5 years or 42 months. And if so, here's the problem with saying that that's literal. For one, okay, this is a lunar calendar, meaning purely based on the moon, which would look something like this right here. 12 months in a year, 30 days each, period. 12 times, that's 360 days per year. That's what a lunar year is, purely lunar right here. So 1 lunar year, 12 months, 30 days, 360 days, 3.5 years equals 1260 on a lunar calendar. Here's the problem. The Jews have never used a lunar calendar. They use a lunisolar calendar, and you have to, because a year is not 360 days long. We know what kind of calendar they used when Daniel wrote the book. We know what kind of calendar they were using from Daniel's time through the first century, through until today. And it's because of what the Bible says. Here's the thing. So here's why. Since the sum of 12 lunar months is 11 days short of a true solar year, which a seasonal year, they added a 13th month, which we know they do still, right? And they do that 7 times out of every 19 years. Why do they do this? Well, so here, I'll read this. The Hebrew calendar is actually lunisolar, meaning the months are based on the lunar cycle, but the years are based on solar years.
And this is all debatable too, by the way. But yes, you're right. And our calendar that we use actually has 13 months from time to time. So, and we do the conjunction calendar based off Israel's new moon and local sundown. Just food for thought.
So the reason I think they didn't use an actual 360 days per year. This is my argument. I'll try to get to the point here.
Oh, but no, you're good. Take your time.
Okay. So no matter what kind of calendar is the one they used, we know that they had to not. I would argue, this is what I'm arguing, that they couldn't have used a lunar solar calendar, a literal lunar calendar, because that would. So essentially, every year you would fall 5 days behind a true solar year, which the seasons are tied to, right? You get 4 seasons. So because the Passover has to be in the spring, right? So because of the crops and all that, they had to make some sort of adjustment. So I know it's debatable exactly how they did it. I'm saying because of that, it can't be literal, because otherwise you could ask the question, okay, if they have one Passover per year, is it one every 360 days? Because if it was one every 360 days, the season, it would be 5 days behind, and the next year would be 10 days off from that point in that season. And then by the time, like, say 30 years in a row of 360 days, you'd be exactly on the other side of the seasons. And so something had to adjust it to keep the Passover in the spring. So because otherwise, like Daniel's weeks of years, like if you like, I know I'm going to do a video on this, but like, they want to like take it and multiply it by 360 and then divide it back into a true year. But they weren't keeping a 360-day year from Daniel's time until Jesus came. They would be counting years, not doing that modification, because, in other words, it'd be every 354 days they'd have a day. I'm trying to think of how to explain this to make the point. The point is, it wasn't 360 days later that the Passover would come. It's
not based on the calendar we use today. It was based on a calendar that had moon months, and even how you interpret the moon months, that's different. But even though it was still moon months.
So, but are you saying? You saying? Yeah, right. So they would cite the moon in a lunation. The lunation cycle. Let me put it this way: the reason they weren't using a lunar year is because a lunar year would be 360 days every single year, but it wasn't 360 days later that the same holiday would fall. There would be adjustments, like adding a 13th month every 2 or 3 years. Let me put it another way. That's a little more simple here. So because of adding a 13th month, if you actually, I've spaced these out to kind of demonstrate it, that if you start anywhere you want on this cycle of these are years, so 19 years, so 12 means 12 months, then 13 months, then 12 months. So that's 19-year cycle. That's what they claim they use, right? So anywhere you start on this and you count 3.5 years, you can start anywhere in the cycle. Because of the added month, you actually never get 42 months in a 3.5-year period, because you're going to have at least one 13th month year, which would mean in any 3.5-year period, no matter where you start, 3.5 years actually never literally has 42 months. It's going to have 43 at least, and some, depending on where you start, you might get 44 if you have 2 13s, which you can in a couple places. So to me, that says, look, because there's 354 days plus or minus a day, and then on the 13th month years, there's 384. I'm saying these are symbolic time periods. In other words, they can't be literal time, because if it's literal time, they'd have to be using a literal calendar, because this represents real history. So my argument is that because it's also given with symbolic apocalyptic prophecy, they actually stand for periods of time, and I would say they're years. So in other words, the 3.5 years represents 1260 days or 42 months, which is, so essentially 1260, or the time times in half the time, are 1260 days, and that period is actually years. And that's what I think. But regarding saying it's literal would mean they had to been using a literal lunar calendar. I don't see how you can make it work. That's kind of the point.
I got you.
And I think people don't. I don't know. What do you think of that? Because I mean, most people say it's literal days, but so is it 3.5 years or is it 1260 days? Because the Bible can't. Yeah. Like, is that going to be like from one Passover to 3 Passovers later, and then at 6 months after that? And because that wouldn't be 1260 days on their calendar. So like,
right.
And then the point is, the people that advocate for that, they're saying it's literal. And if it's literal, then that means it's actually 1260 days. But that can't be actually 3.5 years, because that's not what that actually is the point. And that kind of like, to me, that's like saying the Bible is like being sloppy.
It could be one of those lost in translation things too. Go ahead.
Are we talking about the Revelation 1260 days?
Right. Which
Yeah,
comes from,
I think Steve argues that the Isaiah 24 earthquake will put us back on a 360-day calendar, and that's how it works out.
That's right. Is that in his Isaiah 46:10 video, cut short at the beginning from the end?
I'm not sure, but I know he briefly mentions it in maybe the Days of Noah video, the fourth part that's the most recent, maybe.
Okay.
I'm just glad to hear somebody's like dealing or trying to make sense of it, because taking it seriously, because I'm fine. Maybe it was a 360-day year thing, but here's the thing for me is like, when you're trying to calculate Daniel, because most people tie that 3.5 years to like being part of the 70th week of Daniel. And so if that's true, you could ask the question, well, when Daniel wrote the prophecy, they were already, we know that the Babylonian calendar aligns with the Jewish calendar for like dating biblical events. So like when we know what kind of calendar they used, they made adjustments during when Daniel wrote the prophecy. And I'm not saying he just made up the prophecy and so he wouldn't have been using, but the question is like, if there's the 70th week were tied to the first 69 weeks, and those increments are a portion of that time, we know that when you count the years from the decree to Jesus' ministry, that those first, at least for certain, this first 69 years were not counted according to a 360-day year calendar either. And so I guess if there was something happened and then a year length actually changed, that would actually wouldn't matter then, I guess. You just count the years according to what it was like during that period, which we know what kind of calendar they used. And then if something happened in the future and that 3.5 year period is based on what an actual year is and the year length changed, then that wouldn't matter, I guess. So that could work, I suppose. Yeah. I'd like to talk to somebody like that, because it sounds like they understand the problem there. If they're saying
I think you should talk to Steve, or at least check out some more of his videos. I really like.
Is that the guy you sent me, Yahoo?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll see if I can contact him. I would like to talk to him, because I can't find anybody to bite on this, because I do think if you take the Bible seriously, you have to make an explanation like that. And like, I've been sending it to dispensationalists saying, look, your view doesn't work, dude. And like, no one, like Chuck Missler's, I'm going to do a video on that too. I've already found an article that they wrote from Koinonia House or whatever, Koinonia or whatever.
Koinonia, yep.
Koinonia, yeah. have some articles on it, and because like I've done a lot of study on that, and all those attempts don't work.
Steve does have a like prophecy playlist. I definitely recommend checking out at least the latest videos, and if you need to, you can go back and watch the other ones.
What's the channel called again? I want to make sure I have it saved.
For family.
That's right. Okay, I don't think I saved it before. I'm going to do that right now. I'll be right back.
He's a good dude.
But yeah, otherwise, I can see if maybe my wife can get a hold of them. Steve's pretty hard to get a hold of, but if we can set something up through his wife, maybe that'll work. But yeah, I think it would be a really interesting at least hour or two talk if he's got the time.
I think it might be some passion points for him. He'd probably get excited talking about it with somebody. So, especially somebody that's not already got asking questions that doesn't have the answer already figured out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like, I mean, Steve's open-minded enough that he can roll with any ball for a while, you know, so.
For sure.
Yeah, it'd be really good.
Where'd Jamie go? That's right. What did he go do?
What's that?
Where did Jamie run off to?
I think he went to go make sure he had that channel saved, and then he said he was coming back. I think, I don't know. It's hard to hear because I'm literally just on my phone.
Driving. I hear that.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be looking for a Bluetooth speaker, that's for sure. And maybe a new set of headphones, because this phone doesn't have a headphone jack.
Yeah, most new phones don't. Apple started that trend, and I hated it. And then Android
Yeah,
took it too.
I feel like I've been living under a rock.
Mm-hmm. They should make a USB-C
The internet came in the mail.
They should make the USB-C adapters, though, that have the analog 1/8-inch out audio plug or audio jack.
Oh, that would be sweet. There's our millionaire idea right there.
I'm sure they already have it. And they also have other like on-the-go OTG adapters where you can hook up, USB external media or keyboard and mouse as an example, or, what have you. All right.
Gotcha.
I'm going to pull up a screen share here real quick. I like this one. So it lets us know there's really nothing new under the sun. Remember the former events. Isaiah 46:9. Remember the former events of old, for I am El, and there is no one else. Elohim, and there is no one like me. Declaring the end from the beginning, and from of old and from old that which has not been done, saying, my counsel does stand, and all my delight I do. Calling a bird of prey from the east, the man who executes my counsel from a distant land. Indeed, I have spoken it, also bring it to pass. I have planned it, I also do it. Listen to me, you stubborn-hearted, who are far from righteousness. I shall bring my righteousness near, it is not far off, and my deliverance, it is not delayed. And I shall give deliverance in Zion, my esteem to Yisrael. I think one of the points that Steve makes is, cutting it short from the time that the tribulation's cut short, from the 3.5 years. It's cut from the beginning, and it's not delayed because his deliverance. And I think that's pretty neat. I don't want to botch it anymore. So if you haven't watched it, I'd say you should go watch it. It's a pretty good video. It's from the Isaiah 46:10 conference, I believe. Pretty good video. I could probably find it and link it when we're done, or Yahoo probably knows it off the top of his head. like all those Bible verses. Well, guys, it's 3:00 here where I'm at, or almost. I think I'm gonna go see about getting some food and getting on out of
Yeah,
here.
I could take off. I'm in a pretty hairy stretch of road anyway.
All right. Well, be careful, be safe, and hopefully catch up later. Maybe we can kill some zombies. Shalom, everybody.